to you this morning. Among what we will tell you this morning is this. The MK Party's Dr. John Hlophe cannot be among the members of the National Assembly who serve on the Judicial Service Commission. That's according to the Western Cape Division of the High Court, which has declared Parliament's attempt to include him on the JSC to be unlawful, irrational, and inconsistent with the Constitution. In declaring Hlophe's designation as unconstitutional and invalid, the court has slammed the National Assembly for failing to take into consideration factors that were relevant to Hlophe's designation to serve on the body that supervises the appointment and conduct of judges, namely his impeachment at the beginning of last year. I think it was February last year or thereabouts. So the court saying that they failed to take that into consideration. And basically the message from the court is that you cannot designate a judge impeached for misconduct to the body that oversees the appointment and disciplinary matters relating to judges. So we'll have two reactions coming through for you on that. At about 20 to 7 this morning, we'll be speaking to Mbegezeli Benjamin of Judges Matter and reflecting on that. And then a bit later on, we'll get the reaction, the political reaction of the Democratic Alliance, which was one of the parties that brought about this challenge to that decision that would have seen Dr. John Hlophe included among the list of MPs who serve on the JSC. So those two conversations coming up in the next while. And the other story that we'll focus on quite a bit is this one. We're just hours away, really, from the implementation of the fuel levy increase of 16 cents per litre for petrol and 15 cents per litre for diesel. But if the EFF has its way, that will be averted. The party's urgent legal challenge to stop the fuel levy hike announced by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will go down to the wire as the clock ticks by towards the increase coming into effect. It will be argued today, the urgent part of it at least, to try and avert it from coming into effect. The Red Berets argue that the increase is unlawful, irrational, and economically punitive. It's a case that tests the boundaries of executive fiscal power and may set a precedent on when, how, and under what circumstances taxation measures can be suspended through the intervention of the courts. So at about 20 past 7, we'll be in conversation with the EFF spokesperson, Sinawo Tambo. Basically, the approach that the EFF is taking is administrative law approach that says you need to show us your record of decision. What did you have in front of you as the decision maker when you took this decision to increase the fuel levy? And the debate there is to what extent the president was talking a short while ago, I think when he was talking to the ANC caucus around the debate around the VAT increase and the budget 2.0. And he was saying when your opponent is making mistakes, do not interrupt them. Allow them to make mistakes. And I'm reminded of that in the sense that the debate becomes, when do you as a political party, especially the opposition, allow your opponents, those in government, to make their mistakes? If the taxation measure that they are taking is unpopular, at what point do you say, I will intervene and stop it through the courts? And at what point do you say, let's just watch and let the voters punish them for these unpopular measures that they are taking? It's part of the debate that's playing itself out, and we'll certainly tease it out when we speak to Sinawo Tambo at about 20 past 7 this morning. Morning Brief team, to your stations for the takeoff, please. Dinao Motaung is at the news desk. Rob Byrne on your traffic. Zaikan is at the sports desk. Melissa Buta with the Morning Brief in brief, and that is coming up just in the next few minutes. Dauleng Lechela has your business and market news covered, and Sipho Mantula with your Africa update at about 20 to 7 this morning. Through it all, I'd like you to engage me and let's be in conversation throughout the morning. Give me a call. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. Please send me your WhatsApp voice notes to the number 061 410 4107. On social media, we are at SAFM Radio on X. We are SAFM Radio on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, we are live on our YouTube channel, and that is SAFM Radio. So, What are we waiting for? Let's get this show started.
The rivalry between continental reigning champions Banyana Banyana and the Copper Queens will reach its maximum heat as they intensify their WAFCON preparations. The clock is on a downhill towards their journey to Morocco. This is the international friendly. Catch the incredible clash between South Africa and Zambia on Tuesday, 3 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC2 and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The land is their legacy, but in season 3 of Yellowstone, that legacy is under fire. Kevin Costner returns as John Dutton, fighting to protect his ranch, his family, and everything that can't be bought. More enemies, deeper betrayal, and the battle for the West, it's only just begun. Yellowstone Season 3. This land was won with blood, and it'll take more to keep it. Saturdays at 9:30, starts 24 May, only on S3. Open up.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
All right, let's start today's briefing session with your morning brief in brief with Melissa Puta. Melissa, good morning. Let's start in the courts. Tell me about the resumption of the inquest into the 1985 killings of the Craddock Four.
Morning, Thulasizwe. So, very interesting update there. The reopened inquest into the 1985 deaths of anti-apartheid activists known as the Craddock Four began this week at the Gqeberha High Court. The aim is to determine if security police or others can still be held accountable. However, the court heard that 49 people connected to this case have died, including all 6 members of the alleged police hit squad and key masterminds. Lawyer Howard Vonnet criticized authorities for failing to pursue justice sooner, notably allowing suspected orchestrator Hermanus du Plessis to die in 2023 without prosecution. This marks the 3rd inquest into the case in 40 years, with growing concern that justice may never be served due to the passage of time.
Yeah, this is what happens when you leave these matters unattended for as long as we have as a country. People start passing on, and by the time you wake up to it, you really have few people that can account for some of those deeds. Here's another story, Melissa, that is of concern. Yet another child that has been killed.
This is a sad one indeed. Lukhona Forsi, a 14-year-old grade 8 student from Igusasaletu Secondary School in Johannesburg, was brutally murdered on June 1st, 2025. Her mutilated body was found the next day in Roodepoort, sparking suspicions of a homophobic hate crime. Police are investigating leads, including statements of 2 boys who claim to have known the group that she was last seen with before her disappearance. The Gauteng Department of Education has deployed counseling services to the school, while the Education MEC Matome Chilwane has condemned the murder, highlighting the broader societal issues contributing to such violence, especially during National Child Protection Week. The Foster family is seeking justice and is urging authorities to expedite the investigation and bring those responsible to account, while they are also preparing for the funeral of their loved one.
Yeah, there's no relenting to the onslaught of violence in our country. Tell me about President Cyril Ramaphosa and him not wanting to be bound by this decision that has to do with him signing the National Health Insurance Bill into law.
So the president has approached the Constitutional Court seeking to appeal a High Court ruling that ordered him to submit the record of his decision-making process in signing the National Health Insurance Bill into law. However, the president has argued that providing such a record is not legally required and may involve privileged information, including his legal advice. Ramaphosa contends that the order intrudes on presidential functions and violates the separation of powers, emphasizing that the constitutional challenges to legislation can proceed without disclosure of the president's internal decision-making processes. So it's still going to be quite a long fight.
Yeah. And of late, in the last few months, we've been seeing a few incidents that occur at liquor outlets, tavern shootings and the likes. There's another one that has come through that has happened in Barberton in Mpumalanga.
Yes, so Mpumalanga police are investigating a shooting at a liquor outlet in Barberton that occurred in the early hours of Sunday morning, leaving 2 people dead and 1 injured. No arrests have been made as yet, and the motive still remains unknown. According to the police spokesperson, Brigadier Donald Ndluli, armed suspects opened fire at the outlet, injuring 3 victims who were taken to hospital when 2 later died. Police do believe that more suspects may come forward, and a specialized team is currently working to crack this case.
Yeah, is anywhere safe in the Republic? Anywhere.
No.
Thank you for that. Melissa Puta there with your morning brief in brief. Just some of the stories that we may not necessarily be able to reflect within the confines of the 3 hours that we have together.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So as far as the weather goes, no warnings coming through from the South African Weather Service. So the rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be fine with a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 21. Johannesburg, fine, 3 to 21. Bombela, fine, 6 to 25. Polokwane, fine, 4 to 25. Mahikeng will be fine with a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 22. Bloemfontein will be fine, 2 to 21. Kimberley, fine, 5 to 24. Uppington is fine with a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 23. Cape Town will be cloudy with rain in the morning, becoming partly cloudy with showers in the afternoon with a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 16. George will be cloudy with showers from the afternoon, 9 to 16. Gqeberha, fine, becoming cloudy in the evening, 12 to 20. East London will be fine, 12 to 22. Durban will be fine in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy with a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 23. Richards Bay will be fine in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy, 14 to 25. Pietermaritzburg will be fine in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy with a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 25.
Can one word unlock eternal glory? Okay, maybe just a shiny trophy and bragging rights. It's Password US, hosted by the king of chaos himself, Jimmy Fallon. Celebrities try to guess words. Hilarity ensues. Logic? Optional. Laughter guaranteed. Password US, where saying the right word might win the game, but saying the wrong one is way more fun. Password US, Saturdays 7:30 on S3. Say it like you mean it, or don't. We're not judging.
So you've heard our insurance clients talking about all the money they saved when they switched. You've thought about getting a quote, but you're not sure if they could save you money on your car insurance, or if it's worth the effort. Well, make today the day you get an OutSurance quote. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. If OutSurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you're a winner, like Thulani.
Fast, helpful, efficient, everything was so smooth. I saved 530 bucks.
Make today the day you switch and save. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With OutSurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
We spend a lot of time looking for deals, but we don't invest the same time in our health. Your health buys you more time with the people you love. So who are you staying healthy for, and how can you improve your health? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that rewards you for living healthier with lower premiums and more cover. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guard Risk Life, a licensed life insurer, FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 minutes after 6. Let's focus on this story now. South Koreans have headed to the polls today in a historic presidential election set against the backdrop of the country's most significant constitutional upheaval in decades. The vote follows the dramatic ouster of President Yoon Suk-yeol, who was removed from office after a shocking attempt to impose martial law the first such move since the country's return to democracy in the late 1980s. With the nation still reeling from the constitutional crisis, Democratic Party frontrunner Ling Jae-myung and Kim Moon-soo of the impeached president's ideologically conservative People's Power Party are locked in a high-stakes contest. Let's speak to Professor David Munyai, who is the director for the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time once again, Prof. So the party of the impeached president, Yoon Suk Yeol, the way I read it, finds itself in a spot of bother electorally, in the sense that, as much as the election is being framed as being about the economy and the state of the economy, it's unavoidable that the specter of the impeachment of the president will weigh in how this election plays out. Am I correct in reading it that way?
No, indeed. I think it has more to do with the crisis of incumbent. It was the party that was in power. It is the party with the president that had taken a drastic measure that violated the constitution and impinged. And is the party that represents all that went wrong with Korea, South Korea, and therefore I doubt if the population will be kind at the polls. But people are voting as we speak. The Democratic Party candidate, Mr. Lee, has a great chance of winning outright.
So tell me a bit more about that. The Democratic Party candidate, Lee Jae-myung, is considered to be a front runner. Does it have to do with not just the attempt to impose martial law by the now impeached president, but also what then transpired afterwards? Because I was reading and I got the sense that part of the reason why the conservatives are being punished is that it took them long to actually fully decouple themselves from the impeached president.
Well, he also, there was an attempted assassination on the man. He was knifed on the neck. Even though he has his own crisis and legal issues, one concerning corruption and the second one, violation of electoral laws, chances are quite high that his own policies in terms of these elections, is a man who's trying to have a much more balanced foreign policy with regards to North Korea. He also puts himself much in between the U.S. and China dimension, and an economy that is no longer growing, and therefore there are so many challenges that people see him as with a better chance to revive the economy, and also to deal with national unity. In the last 5 months, I think it has been a crisis in the country. And so disunity, I think, speaks to the current South Korea.
And just say a bit more on that state of the economy, Prof, because this is one of the powerhouses of Asia. And there's been this reportage that says it's been underperforming and characterized by a crisis of the high cost of living.
The issue that at the timing of these elections, I think it comes at a time when President Trump is so hard even to some of his own, the U.S. on close allies. The tariffs on steel, for instance. South Korea is the fourth largest steel exporter to the United States. And there are no signs that the tariff crisis will ease in South Korea economic crisis. There are demands from the U.S. for South Korea to be hard on China. And China remains number one trading partner. And therefore, I think the new leader is speaking a language, a much more balanced, reconciliatory, not only to the North Korean crisis, but reaching out to their number one trading partner, China, as well as reaching out to Japan and others, trying to revive the economy, dealing with issues domestically of disunity. And like most countries, really trying to find a better way of managing all these issues domestically, regionally, as well as global issues.
Yeah, Prof, I remain amazed at how the story has developed. I remember when we first teased it out with you in December, I never would have imagined that this is how it would end, with an impeachment and an election being called. That is Professor David Munyai, who is the director for the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
So I saw I think it's the Polokwane municipality, if not the Limpopo provincial government, one of the two. They were talking about this game that you're going to tell us about. And they were talking about these teams will be playing on the best pitch in South Africa. And I think they said on the continent. And then they got excited and they said, this is the Rolls Royce of pitches. This is the Beyonce of pitches. Tell me about what will happen on the Beyonce of pitches. That is the Peter Mokaba Stadium.
I've got one more to add. It could be the new capital of pitches.
Yeah.
Okay, especially when it comes to Bafana games. And that's where we'll be heading come Tanzania and Mozambique will lie in wait. It will be Bafana head coach confirming that the Peter Mokaba Stadium is where it will all go down. Now, he said that there was some uncertainty regarding the pitches for these two matches. The decision to keep both games in Polokwane was influenced by the fact that the Bulls were scheduled to play a United Rugby Championship semi-final against the Sharks at Loftus. Now, Bruce also emphasizing the results of the two matches are not important. He aims to provide all 23 selected players, and that's what his key goal is.
I think it's a great opportunity for the new players who are with us and also the young players. There is no pressure. We play friendly games, so the result is not that important. From our side, I will give every player the same play time. It's a little bit difficult for goalkeepers, but even there we will try that every goalkeeper is playing the same minutes and that we have make a good evaluation after this week, this FIFA week, on our goalkeepers but also on our players. The performance is the most important thing. Surely we like to win the two games and we will do everything to win the two games. But more important is the performance of the players, certainly the new players. Again, I will not put pressure on them. They just have to play their game and then we will see, evaluate what we are going to do in the future.
That's Bafana coach Hugo Bruges on the Morning Brief. Tennis action, Novak Djokovic through to the quarterfinals at Roland Garros. So is Yannick Sinner, and Britain's Jack Draper missing out to reach the French Opens. He was defeated by the world number 262, Alexander Bublik, and German number 3, Alexander Zverev, moving into the quarterfinals. And the world number 361, Louise Bosson, pulled off the biggest shock at the French Open. She stunned the third seed Jessica Pegula. And we also have Madison Keys booking her French Open quarterfinal meeting with Coco Gauff. She had victory over Hailey Baptiste. Here's Keys looking ahead.
I think Coco is obviously pretty dominant on clay. I would say it's probably one of her best surface to play on. So it's obviously a big challenge. I think for me, it's going to be a lot about trying to balance going after things, but knowing with her ability to cover the court, you're going to have to win the point multiple times before it's actually over.
And that's how we wrap it up. We'll be back with more sport top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Well, the headlines at 6:30. I'm Didomo Daun. Good morning. Economists expect the economy not to have grown in the first quarter of this year. This comes ahead of Statistics South Africa's release of the figures for the 2025 first quarter today. In other news, the Western Cape High Court is today expected to hear the EFF's urgent application on the increase of the general fuel levy. And the National Prosecuting Authority has confirmed that Nandipa Magudumana's legal representatives have served it with a petition. It says they are seeking leave to appeal most of the Supreme Court's appeals judgment last month. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Quite busy on the run up to Pietermaritzburg coming out of Durban this morning. Stationary trucks at Key Ridge, that's the first obstruction. And then it gets pretty heavily backed from Cato Ridge, moving up towards Camperdown. That is another breakdown in the roadworks, dropping you down to a single lane on that section. Pretty heavy there. So if you're Pietermaritzburg bound, it is a morning of queues. At this stage, just staying in around Durban, the M7, getting into Pinetown, coming up off the N3 highway over St. John's Avenue Bridge is already fairly busy as well. Quite a big crash on the M1 north of Polokwane this morning. If you're driving Limpopo north side of Polokwane and you're stuck in traffic, that'll be into a taxi crash, Jane. The M1 north coming up to Diepkloof interchange stays busy after an earlier crash. A collision on Joburg's N3 north at Van Buren Road causing delays coming through from the Ilanz interchange on your way very slowly to Galulis this morning. Cape Town N1 Belleville to Sable Roads already fully loaded. The N2 is a busy one this morning coming in from Khayelitsha. Traffic all the way through to Mowbray Main Road. And speaking of Khayelitsha, it's day 2 of no trains operating to or from Chris Hani on the Central Line. They're running in and out of Khayelitsha, but they're just not able to get through to that last Chris Hani station, and that's because of continuing power supply problems in the area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela for the first update of the morning. Let's start in China, Ndauling. Tell me about manufacturing activity there. It's one of those measures we continue to track. How's it looking?
Morning, Tula. So manufacturing activity in China slightly improved in May, with the NBS manufacturing PMI index rising to 49.5 points last month from 49 in April. Now, the PMI might have slightly increased, but it still remains below the 50-point mark that separates growth from contraction. And this print also marks the second straight month of contraction in factory activity in China. Despite that, there seems to be a silver lining. Output rebounded to 50.7 points from 49.8 points in April, supported by China's efforts to stimulate domestic demand and boost the sluggish economy. New orders, foreign sales and employment all decline at a slower rate, indicating a slight improvement in these areas. Business confidence also improved, reaching 52.5 points after hitting a 7th-month low in April. Moving forward, economists expect China's economy to still face challenges, but policymakers are likely to take bolder moves to clean up the property sector and boost consumption.
Speaking of manufacturing and in China as well, tell me about Shein and their the prospect of listing in Hong Kong.
Yes. All right, so this is according to reports to us, and it seems like Shein is shifting its focus to Hong Kong for its IPO after facing regulatory hurdles while trying to list in London. The company had initially planned to list on the London Stock Exchange, securing approval from the UK's Financial Conduct Authority in March, but Chinese regulators, specifically the China Securities Regulatory Commission, withheld approval, pointing to concerns over human rights abuses in the Xinjiang region, where Shein sources cotton. Now, a listing in Hong Kong would mark a shift in strategy for Shein, which had previously pursued listings in New York and London to gain legitimacy as a global company and access Western investors. But Hong Kong's recent revival in capital market with significant listings like CATL's $5.3 billion float could bode well for Shein's potential IPO in the city. Companies have raised $9.7 billion in Hong Kong through IPOs and second listings in 2025, compared to just over $1 billion during the same period last year. So it seems like the prospects are positive in Hong Kong.
So lastly, Ndauling, how are the markets looking at this hour?
Surprisingly, stocks closing in the green in the U.S. Now, this comes as Beijing and Washington dialed back trade friction, with the U.S. extending exemptions for tariffs on some Chinese goods. This includes solar manufacturing equipment that U.S. industries rely on for their own production. With that, we saw the NASDAQ lead the gains over in the U.S., closing close to 0.7% higher overnight. Meanwhile, local markets are benefiting from higher gold prices, with the Resources 10 complex closing 5.9% higher, and this boosted the all-share up 0.88% in yesterday's session. In the currency scene, the rand slightly stronger this morning, and this despite the sour PMI figures we got yesterday. It's trading at 17.89 to the dollar. And then over in Asia, stocks rebounding and benefiting from a positive close in the US and easing friction between the US and China.
All right, Ntauling, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela with the first update of the morning. She'll be back just after 7:30, in which update she will touch on construction, infrastructure, as well as the mining sectors. So look out for those insights in the second hour of the show.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. Let's start in Sudan. Tell me about the Prime Minister Kamil Idris dissolving the country's caretaker government.
Refreshing morning, Thulas, and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Thulas, even if he did not confirm when will the new government be appointed, Kamil Idris was just appointed over the weekend, Thulas. Dissolving the executive or the cabinet. You will recall that this is a military state, that 4 years after the military coup, there never been a governance. And after Hamdok left as part of the civilian arrangement. Now, Idris, over the weekend, Thulas, has also urged countries supporting the Rapid Support Forces to cease what he called criminal operations in Khartoum. He has also vowed to serve the nation and the Sudanese people with utmost sincerity and dedication. But we ask ourselves, Thulas, when is the elections in Sudan? Because even if you appoint a prime minister by proxy of a military guard, that is worrying. We know Sudan, 24,000 people have been reported killed. Thulas, even if it is likely far higher, 14 million people have been displaced, and also 4 million are streamed into neighboring countries, including the South Sudan. So the crisis of North Sudan, Thulas, is something that is worrying, even as we have said earlier last month, that the AU, it seems, was interested in resolving the crisis in Sudan.
Yeah. And then this story, Sipho, as I've said before, Tanzania has a special place in my heart, and perhaps it's just romantic notions, really. But when it comes down to it, the real politic sometimes plays itself out, and sometimes it's not as pretty. Tell me about this Ugandan journalist and her sharing her harrowing ordeal during her detention in Tanzania.
Thulas, you will recall that the arrest of Tundu Lissu attracted the journalists from Kenya and Uganda to attend his trial. Now you have this Kenyan journalist, Mwangi Boniface. You have this woman from Uganda, Akaser Utahire, who yesterday went on explaining how he was ill-treated by the Tanzanian security forces, Thulas, how they have treated her in terms of the assault, how he was beaten by both of them, accounting to the media, Thulas, about how they were treated and how they were even deported through two borders. The lady from Uganda was deported through Horohoro border, and the Kenyan, the Ugandan sister was pushed through Mutukula border in Uganda. So you can see how the journalists are being treated in Tanzania. Thulas, is the election period, and that's how, when they were covering, they were treated in this way by the government of Samia Suluhu, the current chairperson of the SADC Troika. Thulas, that's worrying when you talk about security of journalists.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, as I said, it goes against those romantic notions that many of us have about that particular country. Tell me about Bill Gates. He's already contributed so much to the African continent in as far as the health initiatives are concerned, as well as HIV/AIDS matters and other humanitarian work. Now he's planning to basically give away most of his wealth within the next 2 decades, and he's saying much of it to the African continent.
Thulas, this was heard yesterday at the AU HQ at the headquarters in Addis Ababa, where the Microsoft founder said that he plans to spend almost $200 billion on improving health and education services across the African continent. He has also raised the issue of aging young people to think how to use artificial intelligence to can improve healthcare. Further, Thulas, you can think about how Meg Rashamashel, who was part of that meeting yesterday, saying that this has come at a moment of crisis with an issue of the cutting of aid by the U.S. In terms of the healthcare. he says that the Gates Foundation at least is bringing more money. Like you have said, 25 years ago, they have been donating money to the continent. But that's how we see Bill Gates urging also the young people to be involved on issues of innovation and creativity.
Lastly, Sipoinia, historical archives. Take me back to the 3rd of June, 1995. What happened?
It's almost 3 decades. It's 30 years ago when the late Nelson Mandela Utata addressed at the dedication of Tunu and Inkalani schools. This was one of the schools that had been 70 years old during that time. That I think those were the eras of Tata being in Tunu. And he raised an important issue to us as we are on the Youth Month, the Soweto Uprising Month, that Tata once said that our children are the rock on which our future will be built, our greatest asset as a nation. They will be the leaders of our country, the creators of our natural wealth, those who care for and protect our people. Very relevant to us when we think about how also the Nelson Mandela Foundation has been focusing on this plight of the children. And as I've said, this is the Day of the African Child within the AU, and mostly the target is around planning and budgeting to us in 2025. There will be those reflections at AU during this month. Asante sana Thulas as facilitating the conversation, SAFM observing the Soweto Uprising Month.
Raz, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mandula there with your Africa update. Just a sampling and a flavor of some of the stories that are dominating the agenda on the African continent and its diaspora.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
Do you want to study towards a tertiary qualification but need a flexible study schedule? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning qualifications offer just that. Our distance learning support is designed for your success. 2025 applications to Stadio's range of high-quality, affordable qualifications are now open. Distance learning qualifications are available in law, administration and management, commerce, teacher education, policing, law enforcement, humanities, and information technology. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
From city streets to dirt trails, introducing the new Isuzu MU-X. Sleek enough for the city, tough enough for the mountains. With advanced all-terrain drive, 360-degree camera, and upgraded suspension to take on any journey. The new Isuzu MU-X, now including the new Onyx XT. It's an SUV with 4x4 capabilities, ready for anything. Experience the new Isuzu MU-X at your nearest dealership today.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime. Because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7. Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. S3, open up.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Let's turn to this now. Unlawful, irrational, and inconsistent with the Constitution. That's how the Western Cape Division of the High Court has described the National Assembly designation of the MK Party's Deputy President, Dr. John Hlophe, to serve on the Judicial Service Commission. In declaring Hlophe's designation as unconstitutional and invalid, the court has slammed the National Assembly for failing to take into consideration factors that were relevant to Hlophe's designation to serve on the body that supervises the appointment and conduct of judges, namely his impeachment last year by the same body. Let's speak to Mbegazeli Benjamin, who is Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter. Good morning to you and thank you for your time once again, Mbegazeli. So in the end, it came down to, the way I read it, it became an administrative law question of whether the correct factors were considered and whether the National Assembly considered irrelevant factors. But ultimately, it came down to this decision to have John Hlophe serving on the JSC being considered to be irrational and invalid.
Good morning to us and good morning to the listeners. You're quite right. It was sort of a technical administrative law kind of decisions because, first of all, they said the National Assembly made an error of law. It fettered its own discretion by assuming that once the parties nominate someone to be a member of the JSC, then that's the end of it. Whereas the court says there are two processes. One is the nomination, which is a political process that is done by the political parties themselves. But then there is a second part of that process, which is the designation. And that is where the National Assembly is acting as a constitutional body and taking or exercising a constitutional power to designate someone who will align with what is contained in Section 165 of the Constitution, which is someone who will enhance the credibility of the judiciary by serving on the Judicial Service Commission. And the High Court said that National Assembly completely mistook that and made an error of law.
So that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because all along, as you say, the assumption has been, and especially on the part of the MK party, the assumption has been that who we designate ultimately, it's basically a rubber stamp process, must be allowed to serve. So you are saying that the court says actually the National Assembly as an institution has a decision to make on its own, and that's why it failed.
Yes. In fact, at many points, the court said the National Assembly cannot rubber stamp what political parties are saying. Yes, political parties must follow their own political processes by nominating someone, but that's not the end of it. And the National Assembly should not accept that nomination necessarily without considering very seriously what factors are relevant to this person serving on the Judicial Service Commission. And that's where the second administrative law point, which is what factors were relevant in this decision that the National Assembly was considering. And the court said it was not possible for the National Assembly not to consider the circumstances that led to Dr. Hlophe's impeachment, which was a gross misconduct finding for interfering with the courts. And then the court says they also must consider the conduct of Dr. Hlophe after he was impeached, which is that he refuses to subject himself to the authority of the courts. He believes that the impeachment process was illegitimate, was not lawful, even though the courts and even Parliament itself have said that this is the process that is followed. So when the court said, when you look at the whole scenario, the factors that were relevant that the National Assembly was supposed to consider when it designated Dr. Hlophe, it did not consider them at all.
What is the import of this decision, Mbegazeli? How does it improve our understanding of how these processes work, as well as bodies such as the JSC and the need to, in a way, curate and ensure that they continue to adhere to the best standards of the Constitution, even in terms of their composition?
Well, we welcome this decision because it gives important clarity to the National Assembly. You'll recall immediately after the election we issued a statement to say the National Assembly has a duty to make sure that the very best people are designated as members of both the Judicial Service Commission and the Magistrates Commission. We even wrote to the Speaker prior to the vote to say, please alert the political parties to this issue, because you can't just accept that the political parties are running the show. And so the judgment has really clarified exactly what we were raising with the National Assembly, and we hope that going forward they will be more careful in whom they designate as members of the JSC, because ultimately they affect the credibility of the judiciary and who ultimately becomes a judge in our country.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Mbegazeli Benjamin, who is Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Morning, got a crash on Joburg's N3 north at Van Buren. So traffic coming out of Germiston and Alberton. Unfortunately, it's another heavy run up towards Galuli's. Traffic backlogging to Rand Airport. Interchange on the N3 and back to Voortrekker Road on the N12 out of the Alberton area. Route 1 pretty busy this morning, but only really between Brockfontein Interchange and New Road. The runs from Montana down through Pretoria into Centurion looks okay at this stage. A lot of congestion on your way to Pietermaritzburg. There's roadworks and a stationary truck just after Cato Ridge on your way up towards Camperdown. That's heavy. There's also a stationary truck before you get there. Usual spot around Kia Ridge. There are two queues to work through coming out of Durban on your way through to Pietermaritzburg, both in the roadworks and both dropping you down to a single lane because one of the two lanes being obstructed by a truck. M7 going into Pinetown, really heavy this morning. Traffic sitting from Hun Stepman Highway up over St John's Avenue Bridge territory. M2 North jam-packed from the M7 through Spaghetti Junction up to the works area at Westwood Mall. Cape Town, there is a few spits and spots of rain this morning, so do take it easy in the traffic. It looks like everything's a bit slower because of that. One indication, Baden-Powell from Mitchell's Plain through Strandfontein to Coastal Park, very slow to Muizenberg. The N1 inbound from Belleville slows all the way through to about Marine Drive this morning. And if you're moving from Goodwood to Maitland, a crash holding you up on Voortrekker Road at the junction with 5th Avenue in the Maitland area. Also worth a mention, the M5, it's pretty solid today from Southfield Parkwood all the way through to the Kuberg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime. Because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7. Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 28 May. S3. Open up. S3.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
13 Southern African nations and North African guests, Morocco, will battle it out for the ultimate glory in the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025 in Mangaung, Bloemfontein. Catch the beautiful game on SABC Plus, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 from 4 to 15 June. Stay tuned to SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
5 minutes to 7. Credit to the initial reporting of Business Tech on this next story. The Association for Monitoring and Advocacy of Government Pensions, that's AMAGP, is crying foul over the management of billions of rand in public servants' pension funds. The association accuses the Government Employees Pension Fund, GEPF, and its asset manager, the Public Investment Corporation, PIC, of squandering pensioners' monies on what it calls politically motivated and high-risk investments. AMAGP, representing around 8,000 retired state employees, warns that what it sees as ongoing misgovernance could result in further massive financial losses, ultimately falling on taxpayers. So let's speak to Zirk Gous of the Association for Monitoring and Advocacy of Government Pensions, AMAGP. Good morning and thank you for your time. So tell me what your concerns are exactly. The way I understand it, they relate to what you're calling high-risk investments, and you've singled out the recent issues that have come through, for example, at the Daybreak poultry farm.
Thank you for your time. Yes, we are extremely concerned about the plundering of the Government Employee Pension Fund, and the reason, as we see it, is simply what we call pension capture. in the classical word of example of state capture, and it is allowed for in terms of the Government Employee Pension Law and Public Investment Corporation Act. I would like simply to go through some facts.
Sure.
The Government Employee Pension Law has got a very specific transformation policy, and we don't argue about transformation. Creation of jobs, etc., laudable. But you do not do that with pension funds money. You do it with taxpayers' money. The risk of that, as we see it, is that it manifests on the PIC side, who is the agent of the fund to run the Isibaya Fund, which is a fund which invests exclusively in high-risk political entities. The result of that is that we've got an annual impairment figure of about 6 billion rand per annum at the GEPF side. And if you analyze that, of the 38 entities being impaired, 30 of them will be Isibaya-related investments. And we are losing billions and billions of pension fund money to the detriment of state pensioners.
Is it really about what you're describing as plundering of funds, Zuk? And the reason I ask is that the figures put out by the GEPF actually militate against what you are arguing. In its annual report, for example, the GEPF telling us that in terms of its capitalization, it's at 119%, which means that for every 1 rand that it can be expected to pay out, it has 1 rand and 19 cents or something along those lines. But also going on to say that in terms of the investment yields, it has yielded a return of some 4.9% in the past financial year, and overall I think about 7% in the past decade or so.
2 comments on that. The figure of 118%, quite correct, but that is the short-term financial liability. The real test is the long-term financial liability and the long-term financial future of and sustainability of the fund. That lies at 74%. That is, you have to allow for contingencies. And there's a contingency looming at this point of time. The state is planning to lay off 30,000 state employees. And now the pension fund will lose the contributions of 30,000 state employees, but it will have the additional expense to pay the pensions of 30,000 state employees. The second comment, the pension fund of parliamentary representatives, they to who the Minister of Finance and the Deputy Minister of Finance belongs. They do not allow the PIC to invest their pension funds in high-risk political and transformation goals and investments.
All right, Zuk, so I've got to leave it there simply because I'm completely out of time, but we will make time and see if we can return to this conversation because it is that important, and I don't believe that we had sufficient time to really delve into the conversation. That's Zuk Gous from the Association for Monitoring and Advocacy of Government Pensions, that is AMAGP. Let's go straight to Dineo Motaung with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
Thank you. Tula's top stories. Economists predict flat growth as Q1 GDP data is due today, and Magudumana takes deportation case to the Corn Court. A very good morning. Economists expect the economy not to have grown in the first quarter of this year. This comes ahead of Statistics South Africa's release of the figures for the 2025 first quarter today. South Africa's economy grew by 0.6% in the final quarter of last year, helping to avoid a recession. Recent data from key sectors like mining, manufacturing and electricity production has shown signs of a struggle, with agriculture tipped to be the star performer. Standard Bank's Dr. Alna Mulman says the poor performance can be attributed to uncertainty during the period under review.
And this uncertainty is, of course, twofold. On the one hand, ongoing uncertainty around US trade policy and tariff changes that could have a material impact on global growth. And then at the same time, significant uncertainty around South Africa's budget in February and March this year that threatened to derail the government of national unity.
The Western Cape High Court is today expected to hear the EFF's urgent application on the increase of the general fuel levy. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana announced increases of 15 and 16 cents per litre for diesel and petrol, respectively, when he tabled the 2025 budget in Parliament last month. The general tax levy increase is expected to take effect tomorrow. The EFF filed its papers last week. It has argued that the implementation of the fuel levy increase is economically counterproductive. Staying the course, the NPA has confirmed that Nandipa Magudumana's legal representatives have served it with a petition. It says they are seeking leave to appeal most of the Supreme Court of Appeal's judgment last month. Magudumana had suffered a blow when the SCA dismissed her application to nullify her arrest in Tanzania. She wanted the SCA to reverse the decision of the Free State High Court to dismiss her application. NPA spokesperson Mthunzi Manga says they will defend the matter when it's heard at the Constitutional Court.
We will oppose the application because we strongly believe that her deportation from Tanzania to South Africa was above board, and therefore her application has no merit and stands to be dismissed by the Apex Court.
We move to the northwest now, where renowned actor Presley Chweneyaga's memorial service is set to be held today at the Mabatu Convention Center in Mahikeng. The actor, who was affectionately known as Kobrizi or Mokweba, died on Tuesday last week at the age of 40. Chweneyagae was born in the northwest in 1984. He got his big international break after starring in the 2005 film Tsotsi, which earned the country its first Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. The actor will be buried on Saturday. Family spokesperson Nzwake Sigudla.
It will start at 10 until 2, the formal program, and there will be activities and celebration after that, which will be concluded at a later stage. And then on Thursday, there will be a second memorial service, which will be in the State Theatre. Pretoria, it will start at 11 and then finish at 2. Then the funeral is going to be in Acacia Hall, Pretoria North, which will start at 8 o'clock.
Lastly, in Gauteng, Rand Water says its ongoing maintenance project will affect the city of Johannesburg from today. The maintenance work began on Thursday last week in the cities of Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, and now Johannesburg. It will continue until next month and will affect other municipalities neighboring Gauteng. Johannesburg Water spokesperson Nombuso Shabalala says they'll provide alternative water supply to the affected areas.
The maintenance at the Palmet system will be conducted from 6 a.m. up until 4 p.m. For 10 hours, pumping will be reduced to 67%, and this will result in poor pressure to no water for residents. The following Johannesburg systems will be affected: Sandton systems, Midrand systems, the Alexander Park Reservoir, South Hills Tower, Linksfield Reservoir, and the Randjeslaagte Reservoir.
Let's take another look at the top story at 7. Economists expect the economy not to have grown in the first quarter of this year. This comes ahead of Statistics South Africa's release of the figures for the 2025 first quarter today. Headlines at 7:30 for SFM News. I'm Dino Mutau.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Here's some breaking news you might have missed. Gordon, a 44-year-old man, switched to Outsurance and now saves an unbelievable 2,794 Rand a month on his 2019 Ford Everest 2-litre automatic. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. You always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, Soccer News, Mamelodi Sundowns under fire with questions now swirling around Coach Miguel Cardoso. And we have the Professional Fighters League making history with its first PFL Africa event in Cape Town. Details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It stays heavy on Joburg's N3 North this morning. A crash at Van Buren. So if you're coming out of Germiston and Alberton, both the N3 and N12 routes heavy into Elands and then all the way up on your way slowly towards Gilulis. N1 from 14th Avenue round to Rivonia Road, looking fairly busy as well today. If you're leaving Durban on your way to Peter Maritzburg, there's been some delays around stationary trucks. There's one broken down just at Key Ridge. There's another causing an equally big backlog, Cato Ridge through to Camperdown. In both cases, you drop into single lanes there. M7 is a disaster queuing up from Hans Detman over St. John's Avenue Bridge into Pinetown. And if you're driving Cape Town this morning, make sure you got some extra time. Everything, all highways busy, jam-packed. There is a bit of light rain around Cape Town this morning. Light rain, high volumes, everything on a go slow, including a crash in Kensington. So coming from Goodwood through to Maitland, some hold-ups there on Four Trekker Road into the crash scene at 5th Avenue. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 9 minutes after 7 on this Tuesday. It is great to be in your company. We're into the second hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Here's what's coming up on the show in this hour. We'll give you further reaction and political reaction in particular from the Democratic Alliance, who were at the forefront of that case to bar the participation of the MK Party's Deputy President, Dr. John Hlophe, in the Judicial Service Commission. They have prevailed, at least in the Western Cape Division of the High Court, which has found that it was unlawful, irrational and inconsistent with the Constitution for the National Assembly to seek to have Dr. John Hlophe designated to be among the members of Parliament of the National Assembly that serve on the Judicial Service Commission, the same body that impeached Dr. John Hlophe, well, that led the processes that ultimately led to his impeachment. Vele Okamp of the Democratic Alliance will be my guest in the next few minutes, focusing on that. And immediately after that, we'll be talking to Sinawo Tambo of the Economic Freedom Fighters. They are also headed to court today, but on a separate matter. This is the fuel levy hike that is set to kick in tomorrow. The EFF, if they have their way, that will be averted. You'll remember that the Minister, Enoch Godongwana, announced a fuel levy hike of 16 cents per litre for petrol and 15 cents per litre for diesel. Well, the EFF has a lot to say about that, and they'll be heading to court using a rather innovative, legal approach, using the administrative law elements that we've been talking about, the Rule 53 approach. And we'll be unpacking all of that with Sinawo Tambo when he joins us immediately after my conversation with Vele Okamp. But through it all, I'd love to hear from you. I'd like your engagements and your perspectives on these matters and any others that may be exercising your mind this morning. The number to dial for that is 086 000 2032. Please also send me WhatsApp voice notes and I'll engage with those and take in your perspectives if you send them to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
What if you open up more? Open up to learning and experiencing more of Mzansi and abroad? What if you open up culture and explore the extraordinary from music to drama and the latest fashion? What if you open up your wild side, discover a world of skyscraping cities and brown sugar beaches? What if you open up your kitchen and immerse yourself in cuisines from all corners of the world? What if you open up your voice with all eyes on you without being seen? What if you open up your morning to lekker conversations and world-class entertainment? What if you open up more?
EFC is live this Thursday. The indestructible champion Zakir Badat descends from the wild mountains to defend his welterweight title against Nigeria's electrifying kickboxing champion Segun Ogunaike. Plus, Timnan Lawuli takes on Sibusiso Suvendila, and undefeated Kevin Pretorius steps up to challenge Oswaldo Benedito. EFC 124 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what youth-focused issues the G20 should incorporate ahead of the summit. And we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply. Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Yeah, let's return to that story. Unlawful, irrational, and inconsistent with the Constitution. That's how the Western Cape Division of the High Court has described the National Assembly's designation of MK Party Deputy President Dr. John Hlophe to serve on the Judicial Service Commission. In declaring Hlophe's designation as unconstitutional and invalid, the court has slammed the National Assembly for failing to take into consideration factors that were relevant in the main. Hlophe's impeachment last year by the same body, that is the JSC. So let's speak to the DA's Vili Okamp. The DA, of course, was among those that were at the forefront of challenging that designation that the National Assembly had sought to make of Dr. John Hlophe. Good morning to you, Vili, and thank you for your time. You must be feeling vindicated.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Yeah, we are very proud about the judgment that we've got yesterday. I think it is a huge step for the independence of our courts. When you look at our government, we must never forget that we've got three spheres of this government. We've got the executive power, that is the president and the cabinet. We've got the legislative branch of our government, that is parliament, who makes laws. And then we've got the judicial part of our government, the courts. And everything that the executive and the legislative branches of government does must be measured against the Constitution, and that is where the courts come in. Your higher courts can make judgment about the constitutionality of any act or acts by Parliament or by the executive. And then you've got the Constitutional Court, obviously, that's the highest court in our country. And we must make sure that judges that serve in the courts in South Africa must be without a blemish to their names. You can't have it that a impeached, disgraced judge then now form part of the body that appoints judges. Sorry, it would have been an attack on the independence of our courts. If you look at Section 165 of the Constitution, it says that state organs must assist and protect the courts through legislative and other measures in order to ensure the independence, impartiality, dignity, accessibility, and the efficiency of the courts. And the Democratic Alliance made it clear
from day one when the NA nominated Mr. Slope to serve on the Judicial Services Commission, that we believe that his presence there would be an attack on Section 165. It will jeopardize that, and therefore it's not consistent with the Constitution, and yesterday's court case confirmed that.
What was the main concern for you around Dr. Slope's participation in the JSC? Because he would have been part of the contingent that comes from the National Assembly, and in terms of how the processes play themselves out, it's highly unlikely that he was going to be as overly influential in the designation of judges to serve in the judiciary. So was this really about protecting the integrity of the JSC and by extension the judiciary, or was this merely politics on your part, using this technicality to exclude an opponent of yours?
One apple can make a full box of apples rotten, one rotten apple. So we must make sure that everybody that serves there are in a position that they can do so independently, and that they can do so to promote the independence of the courts. Now, if you go and look at the charges of which the Judicial Services Commission have found Mr. Slope guilty of, it is the fact that he interfered with two Constitutional Court judges in a judgment previously. And you just cannot do that. So now to have a person there that must assist in the appointment of judges who have showed in the past that he doesn't really care for the independence of the courts itself by his actions, you can't have that person there. We also learned that there will be several judges in the future, or people applying to become judges, that will be very unwilling to appear before a commission which have got a person with the likes of Mr. Slope there. We call them my lord and my lady. We address judges like that. Then they must act like that. In Afrikaans, it's edele. So if you want to be an edele, you've also got to have somebody there that is honorable in all aspects. That is, edel is the Afrikaans word, in all aspects. So no, it's not a political thing. Tomorrow there might be another and another. You've got to fight the injustices every time that it takes place.
Lastly, Vili, let me ask you, are you not worried that you may have opened the floodgates in the sense that I'm seeing one or two comments that are saying this was clearly a case of Parliament regulating its own processes in line with that separation of powers? Are you not concerned that in taking what some see as that Parliament regulating its own processes and framing it as a case of administrative law in the way that you have done, such that it is reviewable by the courts, you may have opened the floodgates such that this can happen again and again regarding many, many other decisions that that Parliament should be able to take?
We must be very proud about the fact that we've got a constitution that allows us, that should what you now said take place, that we've got the option to approach our courts, that our courts will be independent and impartial and act with dignity, and that we then have the opportunity to approach them and declare the decisions that was made by the executive or the legislative powers of this government as unconstitutional. If we did not have that, we would not have been able to measure what the legislative and executive branches of government does to our constitution. We must remember our constitution is the highest law of this country. And in any instances where the other four branches of our government does not adhere to that, the Democratic Alliance will not sit idly by and allow them just to carry on. So we will test it, and hopefully it will happen less and less in the future, because we will have better governments. We saw that now with the Government of National Unity, and let's hope that we will be able to build on that.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Vili Okamp, who is the Democratic Alliance's parliamentary spokesperson.
Can one word unlock eternal glory? Okay, maybe just a shiny trophy and bragging rights. It's Password US, hosted by the king of chaos himself, Jimmy Fallon. Celebrities try to guess words. Hilarity ensues. Logic? Optional. Laughter guaranteed. Password US, where saying the right word might win the game. but saying the wrong one is way more fun. Password US, Saturdays 7:30 on S3. Say it like you mean it, or don't. We're not judging.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Yeah, so we're just hours ahead of the coming into effect of that fuel levy increase that was announced by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana when he tabled his budget 3.0. But if the EFF has its way, that will not happen, the kicking in of that increase. The EFF has launched an urgent legal challenge to stop the fuel levy hike, and that challenge will be heard later on today. So let's welcome Sinawo Tambo, who is the EFF Central Command team member and also a member of Parliament. Good morning to you, Sinawo, and thank you for your time. We were talking just a few minutes ago about framing matters alongside the lines of administrative law and the factors that were considered in making this decision. Tell me what the basis is of this application and what you will be arguing before the court today.
Look, greetings and greetings to the listeners. The basis of our application is that the executive in this instance being the Minister of Finance, should not have unilateral power to impose a tax increase or to impose a tax, because that is something that rests in the powers of the Parliament of South Africa, and that should be introduced through a money bill processed through Parliament and ultimately adopted or rejected. And we're not in a dissimilar situation to what we were going through with regards to the value-added tax increases in that regard. So our court challenge is based on the fact that the minister has not introduced a money bill, is not processing his proposed tax increase, which must be characterized as a tax because an increase in the fuel levy, and the fuel levy itself is a measure of general taxation, and to do that without representation is something irregular. But I think another point that we've been making to us, that the people of South Africa should be aware too, is that the minister made an announcement that the fuel levy increase will take effect on the 4th of June. Now, the Standing Committee on Finance, which sits to either amend or adopt the fiscal framework within which he makes the fuel levy increase announcement, is only sitting today and tomorrow. So you can see that this process is being undermined in terms of Parliament. The National Assembly, which should either adopt or reject the budget itself, sits on the 11th of June, which is next week. By that time, the fuel levy will already be in effect. So these are the two irregular administrative and legislative processes that we think the court should intervene on. We've written to the Minister of Finance to heed our calls and perhaps introduce a money bill so that it can be properly processed in Parliament in time. He did not respond to our letters, and ultimately we had to go to court.
Is it your argument, Sinawo, that the Minister of Finance or any member of the executive should have absolutely no powers to implement measures that amount to taxation, any kind of imposition of a tax without that process having gone through Parliament? Because part of what you will hear in the counter argument might be that, this will have the effect of, it will stymie the effectiveness of the executive, in that it's almost deferring to Parliament on every decision that needs to be made, including decisions that some would say are very much within the purview of a Minister of Finance.
Look, our constitutional democracy is structured in that way, and fortunately, because ultimately that would mean that we'd have a dictatorship of the executive that can pass legislation that is regressive and affects people at a general level without any proper oversight. So if the Minister of Finance sought to have powers to impose taxation without parliamentary approval or intervention, that means the people of South Africa are at the whims of the decisions of individuals rather than a collective of elected political leaders from political parties. So I think it's an important part of our constitutional democracy that Parliament is a necessary ratifier of decisions such as the fuel levy. And I mean, the fuel levy in our argument as well is even worse than the value-added tax increases. And it shows that the Minister of Finance is not interested in democratic engagement when it comes to the budget, because in his commitments to some political parties who are going around claiming that they've assisted in scrapping the VAT hike, they said that they will adopt alternative revenue generation mechanisms, but none are there now. Instead, they've replaced VAT with a fuel levy hike, and the fuel levy hike will have a ripple effect on the cost of goods, services, transport, taxi fare, and bus fare. And there's no zero rating of fuel in the same way there would be a zero rating of food items, for example, with the value-added tax increases. So it's a dangerous tax, and we hope that the court will listen to our argument in that regard.
So take me through how this process will play itself out. The way I understand it, you using the typical approach in cases such as these. You have a part A, which has to do with the urgency of the situation and a decision that needs to be taken now, and then you have a part B that will be argued a bit later on. Tell me about the part A. On what basis are you arguing this urgency today?
Look, we're arguing the urgency because it's set to take effect on the 4th of June. So that is a primary basis of the urgency that we're arguing. And also we had argued that the minister had not gazetted a notice that he's going to introduce a money bill to process this through Parliament correctly. He has since yesterday, shockingly enough, 2 days before the fuel levy is set to take effect, gazetted a notice that is going to adjust the taxation of the fuel levy. And he issued that notice in terms of the Custom and Excise Act of 1964. That is going to be doing that adjustment. So we're arguing the urgency on the basis that he hadn't gazetted the basis of how he's going to introduce the fuel levy, but also that it's going to take effect on the 4th of June, and we don't want to retrospectively try to reverse the decision he's making. And then in part B, we are arguing against the unilateral powers to impose taxation without representation, and arguing for the protection of the sanctity of the process of introducing a tax which requires a money bill to be processed through Parliament.
All right, I've got to leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Sinawo Tambo of the Economic Freedom Fighters. He's a member of that party's top leadership, that is the Central Command team, and also the party's MP.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. Once again, I saw that Tlhopi Motsepe was at the airport to welcome the team back and was magnanimous and talking nicely with the fans and commiserating with the team. But not everyone is being that kind, at least to the coach.
No.
Yeah.
And I think behind closed doors, Tlhopi wants trophies.
Yeah.
And Cardoso is delivering talking points. We'll hear from Miguel Cardoso now, the under fire coach. Very disappointed after losing 3-2 on aggregate to Egypt's Pyramids FC in the CAF Champions League. Questions swirling around Miguel Cardoso. And with the domestic league title secured, their Nedbank Cup loss to Kaizer Chiefs. And now this collapse putting pressure on the coach. Let's hear from Sundown's Miguel Cardoso.
What I feel is that we in some moments didn't find a way to compete in the level that we should have competed in order to win the trophy. Anyway, it's not many people or many players, many coaches, many members of staff, many board members, many clubs that play finals of Champions League and that have the right to win a medal.
In the meantime, Bafana coach Hugo Bruges is preparing for friendly matches against Tanzania and Mozambique, which will take place at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. Bruges has excused the Sundowns players from his camp, knowing that they were busy with the CAF Champions League final and they're now preparing for the FIFA Club World Cup. He says it's also part of preparing for a refreshing of the team for the future.
There are other teams in South Africa, so we will see what will happen now. There will be an influence. It's normal because those Sundowns players were always there. Nearly every game we played in the past. But from some of the Sundowns players are also 30 and more. So we have to think also to the future.
Let's head now to tennis action. Novak Djokovic through to the quarterfinals. Yannick Sinner as well. He disposed of Andrei Rublev. And Britain's Jack Draper, well, he missed an opportunity to reach the French Open quarterfinals. He was defeated by the world number 62, Alexander Bublik. Here's Bublik.
I left it all out there, I have certain skill set to play tennis, and it worked marvelously today, 100%. One of the best days of my life and one of the best matches I ever played in my life. So that was as simple as that. In certain moments, I do believe there is only one chance. So in that regard, I had simply no other, source. I have to win. So I did my best and it worked well.
And finally, MMA history will be made in Cape Town on the 19th of July as the Professional Fighters League launches its first ever PFL Africa event at the Grand West. And this marks the beginning of a 4-event African tournament backed by PFL chairman and Cameroonian superstar Francis Ngannou. More sports, top of the hour. I'm Zara.
With the headlines at 7:30, I'm Dino Madaung. Good morning. The organization Undoing Tax Abuse says the EFF's case against an increase in the general food levy is not strong. The Western Cape High Court is today expected to hear the EFF's urgent application against the increase. In other news, economists expect the economy not to have grown in the first quarter of this year. This comes ahead of Statistics South Africa's release of the figures for the 2025 first quarter today. And Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has denounced the new American and Israeli-run aid delivery system in Gaza. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Joburg first up, still very slow coming out of Germiston and Alberton. A crash taking a while to clear up on the N3 north at Van Buren. Traffic parking back through Ilans onto the N12 and N3 routes. The N1 from 14th Avenue round to Ravonia is pretty sluggish this morning. N14 on your way to Pretoria, the Krugersdorp Highway. Traffic sitting from the 55 Pretoria West exit again up towards Brockfontein interchange territory. Durban to Pietermaritzburg. Good and bad news. The bad news, the truck at Key Ridge is still there just after Shongweni will hit some traffic. The better news is the truck between Cato Ridge and Camperdown has now been cleared. M7 into Pinetown stays heavy from Queensborough this morning. And there's a breakdown M2 south before you get to Kwamashu. So coming through from Gateway's heavy. And the N2 looks extra sluggish from M7 all the way almost to Mgeni Road this morning. Normally you're out of it by Westwood Mall, but extending a little bit further up the road. Cape Town, wet and slippery roads and high volume. So a lot of traffic congestion all over town, including a crash into the city centre on the N1 at the end of the elevated freeway by Walter Sisulu near the waterfront exit. That's holding traffic all the way back to Parow and sort of N1 city territory, and a crash on the N2 going out of town at Mew Way in front of Khayelitsha. Some delays there, but generally right across the board things slow and sluggish around the greater Cape Town region. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndauleng Lechela. Ndauleng, I get the feeling that it's going to take a bit of marketing and promotion for us to get used to this new brand name. Tell me about Valterra Platinum.
Yeah.
You might have to allude to their past name for us to remember who you're talking about. Yeah.
So Valterra Platinum, previously known as Anglo-American Platinum, their demerger from their parent company, Anglo-American, has been completed, marking a milestone for the company. As part of the separation, Valterra Platinum listed on the London Stock Exchange yesterday. The company's entire issued share capital of 265 million ordinary shares was admitted to trading on the LSE's main market with initial market value of £7.5 billion. Now, the group says the LSE secondary listing complements its listing on the JSE, which it says broadens its shareholder base. Analysts in the meantime say the strong start to Valterra's London listing reflects confidence in the company's prospects as an independent PGM miner and continued interest from UK investors. As part of the demerger, Anglo-American will hold on to a 19.9% stake of Valterra Platinum for at least 90 days, with plans to manage the shareholding over time. The transaction has been described as a boost to the London capital markets, allowing Valterra to become independent and establish larger market for trading its shares.
And then, Ndauleng, tell us about out of the infrastructure sector, Robex delivering double earnings a double earnings growth.
That's right, Thulas. And, you know, sometimes you think of a construction company and you think double-digit earnings in this time. It kind of comes as a surprise. Yeah. Their revenue jumped 21% and their earnings jumped 25%. The company's order book has also grown to 28.1 billion rands, driven by its growth in its roads and earthworks division. Now, this division's growth was driven by government tenders, including Sunrail projects. Raubex's infrastructure Infrastructure Division also performed well, with revenue increasing 27.4%, boosted by new contracts secured here at home in South Africa and in Western Australia. Now, the company's focus on privately owned renewable projects has also started paying off, with 2 flagship projects in the renewable energy space delivering solid returns in this current financial period. Raubex has also been awarded a 2.3 billion tender to refurbish the Parliament building in Cape Town, which is expected to be completed over 20 months. Looking forward, the government's planned 1 trillion rand spending on critical infrastructure is also expected to boost Raubex's books, with the company saying this commitment bodes well for the group.
So how are the markets looking at this hour, Ndauling?
Starting things off in Asia, stocks trading mostly in the green, with investors assessing developments between the US and China, while also digesting Chinese manufacturing numbers. With that, the Hong Kong Hang Seng is leading the gains on that front, up over 1%. In Wall Street, futures are in the red, turnaround from yesterday's close. Conversations around trade deals continue to drive sentiment. And then coming back home, gold's safe haven appeal continues to work in the miners' benefits here at home, boosting the Resources 10 complex, which fueled gains on the JSE yesterday. The All share ending the day 0.8% higher. Then looking at the currency front, the rand is charging ahead as eyes shift to that all-important GDP print out later today. The local unit is sitting at 17.86 to the dollar this hour.
That's the morning brief. Ndauling Lechela, always right on the money. She'll be back with one more update for you, and that's coming up just after 8:30.
The land is their legacy, but in season 3 of Yellowstone, that legacy is under fire. Kevin Costner returns as John Dutton, fighting to protect his ranch, his family, and everything that can't be bought. More enemies, deeper betrayal, and the battle for the West, it's only just begun. Yellowstone Season 3. This land was won with blood, and it'll take more to keep it. Saturdays at 9:30. Starts 24 May. Only on S3. Open up.
Banyana Banyana, African champions, host Zambia and Botswana in the 3 Nations Challenge to prepare for their title defense in Morocco. All matches will be at the Lucas Moripe Stadium at 3 p.m. Banyana Banyana take on Botswana on Wednesday the 28th of May. Then Zambia faces Botswana on Saturday the 31st of May. And Banyana Banyana close with Zambia on Tuesday the 3rd of June 2025. The nation with the most points wins the trophy. And the tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 40 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12 and scholars in uniform. For more details, visit safa.net and Banyana_Banyana on X. The rivalry between continental reigning champions Banyana Banyana and the Copper Queens will reach its maximum heat as they intensify their WAFCON preparations. The clock is on a downhill towards their journey to Morocco. This is the international friendly. Catch the incredible clash between South Africa and Zambia on Tuesday 3 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC2 and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
20 minutes to 8 on this Tuesday. Let's focus on public health, and especially in the province of Gauteng, where we are told that the public healthcare system in this province is under intense pressure, with over 34,000 patients currently on the waiting list for surgical procedures. This has been disclosed by the Health MEC Nomantu Nkomorale-Hoko in response to a parliamentary question, a legislature question coming through from the Democratic Alliance. So let's welcome Dr. Pesimkhulu Silepe, who is Acting Chief Operating Officer at the Gauteng Department of Health. Good morning and thank you for your time. I've cited the figure of 34,000, but in your own words, just paint the picture for us of the backlogs in terms of the surgeries that should be undertaken by patients across the system in Gauteng.
Yeah, good morning to Thulasizwe and your listeners. Thank you for that question. Yes, it's true that the NEC has declared that we have that surgical backlog or waiting list in our various institutions, extending from our regional hospitals to our academic institutions like Chris Hani Baragwanath and Charlotte Maxeke. Yes, it's true that as the Gauteng Department of Health, we are dealing with all these cases in question, and also due to the high volumes that we see on a daily basis within our institutions, as Gauteng Department of Health, we are really inundated with all these medical patients that are coming through our institutions that are capable of doing these institutions. But of note as well, is that as a department in the past financial year, we have also managed to do about 164,000 cases or more of surgeries in our institutions. Also dealing with emergencies and those elective cases.
Yeah.
But also what put pressure on us as a department is the number of emergencies that we see on a daily basis. If you take, for instance, an institution like Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, which is one of our largest trauma units, on a normal non-busy day, we see about 70 patients, and most of these patients would be seriously injured. And as they are seriously injured, then they would take up a lot of theater time. And let me just give, for instance, a scenario where a doctor would book a patient, like today, it's a Tuesday morning, a doctor has booked a patient for an elective operation. And this doctor on Monday has done everything to make sure that this patient has to go into theater on Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
And has booked also probably an ICU bed. But on Monday night, we received probably 3 gunshots, 5 MVAs, and then these patients have to go through that vigorous theater.
I think many people, Doc, will empathize with that, the demands on the system as you are outlining them. But you may face an argument that says you should be planning better and using your resources effectively, because you are inundated by more demand on a daily basis, including emergency surgeries, doesn't obviate the need to attend to the backlog.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that we do not attend to the backlog. And yes, in terms of planning, the hospitals do plan, but those plans also, what I want to highlight is that to yourself and your listeners is that there are a lot of dependencies that come on a daily basis. And some of these patients that are waiting are not emergency as such, but are those patients that are elective, that when it comes to giving first preference, we would give first preference to the patient that comes on a daily basis as emergency, whether it's a pregnant lady who has hypertension, that we really need to save her from probably a condition like eclampsia, where she'll be fitting, and we have to evacuate the baby. And those are some of the things. Yes, also in terms of the infrastructure, what we need to understand is that it's not all hospitals that are at the same level.
Yeah.
We have probably in Gauteng about 11 hospitals that are just district hospitals. And their role in the system is just to manage minor cases and predominantly maternity.
None of what you are saying, Doc, speaks to addressing the backlog. And I've said that many will empathize with the pressures and the demands that you've been outlining. And the reason I emphasize on this point is that last year you were acknowledging this backlog. And I think at that time you were talking to it being, at the end of April, 38,000 patients on the waiting list. This year, we're at 34,000. And at that time, you were talking about programs that were meant to address the backlog, surgery marathons and the likes. What I'm proposing to you is that there's little evidence of those measures reducing the backlog, which includes, as important and urgent as urgent surgery is, the issues that we are talking about are also equally important. Issues such as cataract removal procedures, where the backlog, we're told, stands at 9,000. These are people facing the risk of blindness. So I'm saying to you, it doesn't seem like your measures to address specifically the backlogs are working.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Our measures are working, but also at the same time, as I've said, I mean, if you look at as you've just talking about cataract, we've got Saturday marathons that are dealing with cataracts at hospitals like Liratong Hospital, Mamelodi Hospital, and Chris Hani Baragwanath, and working together with some of the partners that are partnering with us in terms of assisting as well. But the volumes that come through after that success, not only coming from us as province, but we also get requests that come from other provinces. And some of our people also that we deal with on a daily basis, once they've seen our success, they even come and request to say, can I bring my relative who is coming from another province so that he can get this service faster, because you can do these things on Saturdays in terms of those cataracts. So as a department, we are proceeding with the, for instance, the Saturday list that we do in those institutions, that we are pushing to make sure that we try to reduce these numbers. But there's one phrase that they say in Zulu, but kushaye dosai. The more we pull, the more these people see that and come to us.
All right, Doc, I've got to leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Dr. Percy Mkhulu Silepe, who is the Acting Chief Operations Officer at the Gauteng Department of Health.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Krugersdorp Highway, Pretoria bound this morning, sitting traffic between the R55 Pretoria West exit and the N1 Bruckfontein interchange. Crash on Joburg's N3 North at Van Buren is cleared. It is the sort of backlog of traffic plus just the normal volume that's still snarled up between Elan's interchange and the Modderfontein Road exit. Joburg's Beyers Nordier on the N1 going north all the way round to Buccleuch is fairly heavy, and some queuing pressure out of Benoni, N12 down towards the Rondebolt Road as you come into Boksburg, looking pretty heavy as well today. Across into Durban, that M7 into Pinetown stays heavy. Queues from around about the N3 highway. The N2 is badly backed up, heading up towards the roadworks at Westwood Mall. Delays just a little bit beyond the M7, and there's some heavy pressure on the M4 going in on the Southern Freeway. Big traffic up into the CBD. We saw it yesterday as well as you come off the M4. There's some roadworks and restrictions in the Durban CBD near Victoria Embankment. Victoria Embankment, the Esplanade inbound to central Durban was bad all day yesterday. It's bad this morning, and it's pushing that M4 traffic right back through to the Umbilo side. Cape Town, everything on a go slow because, of course, of the wet weather conditions. A couple of crashes on the N2 outbound at Meway, slowing traffic passing Khayelitsha. Also crash going into Stellenbosch on the R44 at Dorp Street. That's right in the centre of Stellenbosch. And the N2 inbound, a stationary truck at Victoria Street, causing quite a big backlog coming into the Somerset West area, direction Cape Town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
As a business owner, I've noticed how being energy efficient has improved my savings and the growth of my business. You too can improve your margins by adopting energy efficient behaviors. Simply switch to energy saving lighting, switch off non-essential equipment, and maintain HVAC systems. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to see your business soar, as well as contribute to a greener planet. Just like every rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Here's some breaking news you might have missed. Gordon, a 44-year-old man, switched to Outsurance and now saves an unbelievable 2,794 Rand a month on his 2019 Ford Everest 2-litre automatic. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. You always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, we'll come back to your calls in a short while, but let me bring you this story before we do that. Hundreds of mentally ill individuals deemed unfit to stand trial or be held criminally liable are being kept in the country's prisons instead of psychiatric hospitals, a practice that contravenes the intent of the law and undermines both mental health care and human rights. Despite legal obligations and growing concern, the Department of Health and the Department of Correctional Services continue to dispute responsibility, leaving vulnerable individuals in overcrowded and inappropriate facilities. So let's hear the perspective of the Department of Correctional Services from Singabako Ngumalo, who speaks on behalf of that department. Good morning to you, Singabako, and thank you for your time. Why are individuals that are deemed to be unfit to stand trial and also unfit to be held criminally liable being kept in prisons?
A very good morning to listeners, and thank you for having us. What we are faced with as correctional services is a situation where when a person is brought with a warrant from court, we have no right to refuse admission. We have to admit those people. And unfortunately, some of them, you find that they come with mental illnesses. Some have already been determined to be suffering from different illnesses. And we have to keep them in our facilities until such time that we are able to transfer them to an institution well equipped to house them. We continue to engage with the Department of Health to transfer these state patients, but unfortunately, for as long as there are no beds available, we just have to keep them. And it's something that does put a strain on us because our officials, in as much as we have healthcare practitioners, but they are not trained to deal with this specific type of patients. Therefore, that's where we feel the pressure. Hence, from time to time, we engage with the Department of Health to take these patients. They do assist, but sadly, there are provinces where you find that the numbers are just too high, such as Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga.
Yeah, in fact, I'd say, Singabako, I'd suggest to you that your facilities are particularly unsuited to take care of the so-called state patients, given the numbers that you're dealing with already of people who are, either awaiting trial or have been convicted, but also just the lack of mental health care facilities within your institutions.
We are challenged. We have to say that because some of these patients, you find that you cannot keep them in a criminal cell with other inmates. They may cause a disturbance there. And you do not also want a risk of keeping them in a single cell. What if they hurt themselves or even commit suicide? It therefore demands that we even deploy additional resources because they must be monitored continuously in case they decide to do other things. So as a department, it's something that we've been pushing it quite strong, and also, making a call to the Department of Health to understand their pressures. But where they do find beds, they do take them. But you find that, let's say maybe they manage to take 15 in a month, there'll be about 20 coming in. So, and we cannot instruct the court in saying that do not issue these warrants where state patients are sent to us, but they will say the law does allow that correctional services can keep some of them, but our institutions ideally are not suitable to keep state patients.
So what's the extent of the problem that we're talking about, Singabakho? How many patients are we talking here? From the reporting I've seen, it seems to be a growing number rather than reducing.
I'll give you just a total number for the previous week. We had 326 state patients and one patient who is defined to be involuntary mental health. And as I've said, the majority in the Eastern Cape, where we have 134, followed by the Free State and Northern Cape, where we have 63, and then Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northwest, where we have 56. And the Western Cape, we have none because they think they have a number of psychiatric hospitals. Hence, the issue of transfer is not an issue there, which clearly demonstrates that in provinces where you have sufficient state institutions or psychiatric hospitals, you do not then find correctional services having to house state patients.
What challenges come with having these state patients in correctional facilities in terms of just overall management of the facilities, as well as the population's interactions with other inmates, as well as issues of safety and security? Because here we're talking about people that have mental illness that renders them to be to have no capacity to be held to account for any criminal activities they may have committed.
Let us say someone has been perhaps prescribed to take a particular medication. Our healthcare professionals will try to administer that. But there are particular behaviors where you may find that you now need someone trained in psychiatry to deal with, because our correctional officials will only know how to perhaps train the person if it's becoming violent, but also the manner in which they go about that, they have to be careful in a way that they do not hurt or cause further harm. How to go about rehabilitating these people, not in a sense of correcting an offending behavior, but in dealing with the illnesses that they could be suffering from. So they bring quite a number of dynamics where we find that our officials are not geared to handle. And as a result, you may find that our healthcare professionals will now have to mobilize more to try and handle them, meaning that other ordinary inmates now do suffer because that resource is being stretched somewhere else. So as a department, it's a matter of saying the healthcare professionals that we have, do they have the capacity? And the answer is some yes, but in the main, no. Hence, therefore, we've been making a call in saying that we have to find a way in the country to increase the number of psychiatric hospitals, to even where you may not have a psychiatric hospital, but at least have sections where you can deal with this group of people and then give them the best care possible.
Lastly, Singabakho, this may be opportune for me to ask you for an update in terms of the overall psychological and psychiatric mental health status within correctional services. A few years ago, entities including the Judicial Inspectorate for Correctional Services described what was a dire situation. Many would say almost non-existent mental health facilities in correctional services. Has anything changed since we had that conversation?
We've been looking at a number of measures in terms of making our facilities to respond to various needs, and also looking at the profile of people that we're admitting. Yes, a number of people coming to our facilities, in as much as they may have committed crime and sentenced, but to find that they do suffer from mental illnesses. Hence, what we've done is to make the process of assessment more stringent when people are admitted, so that we are able to identify them as they come in, and then in their correctional plan, we're able to factor those in. But those who require additional healthcare support, we're then able also to do so. We've also been increasing the number of officials within our healthcare unit, but you also understand the pressures that we have as a country in terms of bringing in new officials. we're doing that in a staggered manner, but it's a situation that is receiving attention. The pace could be much faster, but with the resources that we have, unfortunately, we just have to take what we can take in a particular year. As I'm talking to you, we have new recruits at college, but what we've done, we've made it a point that it is more dynamic and looking at different skill sets.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. That's Singabakho Nxumalo, spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services. Let's go straight to Dineo Motaung with the latest news.
Thank you, Tulas. Good top stories. Outer questions EFF's case on fuel levy increase, and UN Rights Chief slams new Gaza aid system. A very good morning. The organization Undoing Tax Abuse Outer says the EFF's case against an increase in the general fuel levy is not strong. The Western Cape High Court is today expected to hear the EFF's urgent application against the increase. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana announced increases of 15 cents per litre for diesel and 16 cents per litre for petrol respectively when he tabled the 2025 budget in Parliament last month. The general fuel levy increase is expected to take effect tomorrow. Outer CEO Wayne Duvenage.
I don't think the EFF's case is a strong one, and by saying that we're not advocating that the fuel levy should go up, but it is one of the mechanisms available to the Minister of Finance, which he has every right to do as he balances the books, and he's been very good, I think, in the last 3 years by not increasing it. So going up 16 cents as a reprieve or as an alternative to putting the VAT increase up by 0.5%, we believe is the lesser of two evils.
Earlier, the EFF said Godongwana had taken an incorrect approach in his decision to propose the increase in the general fuel levy. The party's Impile Mautwe.
Yes, we are vehemently rejecting the fuel levy increase, and our reasoning is very simple. It's a regressive tax. But also, the minister is relying on wrong judgment. So the fuel levy is not a regulatory or an administrative issue. It is a tax issue, and it's a tax of a general application. It doesn't check whether you are rich or you are poor, you are wealthy or not.
In other news, economists expect the economy not to have grown in the first quarter of this year. This comes ahead of Statistics South Africa's release of the figures for the 2024 first quarter today. South Africa's economy grew by 0.6% in the final quarter of last year, helping to avoid a recession. Recent data from key sectors like mining, manufacturing and electricity production has shown signs of a struggle, with agriculture tipped to be the star performer. Standard Bank's Dr. Elna Mulman says the poor performance can be attributed to uncertainty during the period under review.
And this uncertainty is, of course, twofold. On the one hand, ongoing uncertainty around US trade policy and tariff changes that could have a material impact on global growth. And then at the same time, significant uncertainty around South Africa's budget in February and March this year that threatened to derail the government of national unity.
We move to the Western Cape now, where the speed limit on the R44 at Betty's Bay in the Overberg has been reduced to 60 kilometers per hour. This comes after residents submitted a request to the Western Cape government to decrease the speed from 80 kilometers per hour. Provincial Mobility Minister Isaac Sileko says the reduction in the speed limit will help to protect lives.
This speed limit reduction is about saving lives. Slower speeds mean safer roads for residents, visitors, and everyone who travels through this area.
Further afield, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has denounced the new American and Israeli-run aid delivery system in Gaza. He says it's heartbreaking and shows utter disregard for civilians. Dozens of Palestinians were shot dead near one of the distribution points. Survivors have blamed Israeli troops, but it has denied responsibility. Turk has described what is happening in Gaza as ethnic cleansing.
Ethnic cleansing means that you essentially displace forcibly a population into areas where they can hardly survive. That's what's happening as we see it. And you have 20 months of warfare. You have an extremely exhausted population. You have emaciated children. You have now conditions of life that are increasingly incompatible with the continued existence as a group in Gaza.
Let's take another look at the top story at 8. The organization Undoing Tax Abuse Outer says the EFF's case against an increase in the general fuel levy is not strong. The Western Cape High Court is today expected to hear the EFF's urgent application against the increase. Headlines at 8:30 for SAFM News. I am Dinoma Tau.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Breaking news just in. Pinky, a 60-year-old woman, slashed 870 Rand a month off her car insurance premium. That's right. Pinky switched to Outsurance and now saves a mind-blowing 870 Rand a month on her 2020 Kia Seltos 1.6. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, soccer, Banyana are bracing for Zambia in the final of the Tri-Nations clash today. And we also have cricket action with the Proteas. They prepare for a test final against Zimbabwe. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
No major incidents across Gauteng highways, although it is just a very busy, particularly the N1 from Beyers Nordier to Buccleuch, the N3 from Germiston's Elands all the way up to Modderfontein Road, then more traffic moving on the N3 through Limbro Park up towards the Buccleuch interchange, I beg your pardon. Getting up through Midrand, looking fairly busy as well. Queues on the N1 up as far as Allendale Road. Roadworks on the R21, leaving the airport on your way to Pretoria today around the Bobsfontein exit, so that is slow. Durban, if you're inbound to the city centre, there's some very heavy pressure. We saw this yesterday, seeing it again this morning, coming off the M4, the Esplanade, down into central Durban. Very slow. It was bad all day yesterday. This morning, behind that backlog is an M4 that queues into the city from as far back as the Umbilo side. N2 still heavy. M7 going up towards Westwood Mall. A breakdown before Market Road on your way to Pietermaritzburg, causing big delays. And Cape Town, we've been mentioning a bit of rain plus high volumes. Everything on a go slow. M5 is heavy this morning from Parkwood through to the N2, and plenty of traffic on Marine Drive, queuing out of Tableview to Racecourse Road, and then from Milnerton High School down towards Milner Road. Second queue as you come into Pardon Island. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8 on this Tuesday. It is great to be in your company. We're into the third hour of the Morning Brief. What have we not covered? What have we not covered? We've spoken about the law as it relates to the decision that was taken by the National Assembly to have Dr. John Hlophe of the MK Party as one of the representatives of the National Assembly in the Judicial Service Commission. That has been found to be unlawful and invalid, constitutionally invalid, and there's been a lot of reflection and reaction to that. You may want to weigh in on that. Basically, it is based on this premise that says the fact that Dr. Hlophe was impeached as a judge early last year by the JSC itself was a relevant factor that the National Assembly should have considered in coming up to that decision to have him as part of the JSC contingent. So that's one. But the other one that we've been focusing on is the one that will play itself out in the courts today, the EFF moving to get an urgent interdict to try and stop that fuel levy increase that was announced by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana when he announced his budget about 2 weeks ago or so. Well, they're hoping, the EFF is, that will be stopped dead in its tracks on the basis that, they don't believe that the minister should be able to increase any taxes without tabling a bill before Parliament. So those are some of the issues that are in the air, in the atmosphere. We've covered issues to do with health and the backlogs in Gauteng, and towards the end of the last hour, talking correctional services and just the difficulty. And what I picked up there is that the lack of, bed space, psychiatric bed space in the normal hospitals is leading to a situation where people who are found by the courts to be mentally ill and not capable of standing trial and understanding the consequences of their actions, instead of being diverted and going to psychiatric hospitals, find themselves actually, in a way, serving a jail sentence despite being found to be incapable of standing trial. So those are the dynamics among the conversations that we are having this morning. But feel free to add to this agenda. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes if you send them to 061 410 4107. The third hour of the Tuesday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
In a land scorched by the sun and shaped by time, life refuses to surrender. From the silent stalk of the Arabian leopard to the resilient march of the sand gazelle, witness nature's fiercest survivors. Arabian Inferno, a journey into one of Earth's most extreme habitats where every day is a battle for survival. This is the wild. This is Arabian Inferno. Sundays at 6 p.m. on S3. Open up.
Banyana African champions host Zambia and Botswana in the Three Nations Challenge to prepare for their title defense in Morocco. All matches will be at the Lucas Moripe Stadium at 3 p.m. Banyana take on Botswana on Wednesday the 28th of May. Then Zambia faces Botswana on Saturday the 31st of May. And Banyana close with Zambia on Tuesday the 3rd of June 2025. The nation with the most points wins the trophy. And the tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 40 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12 and scholars in uniform. For more details, visit safa.net and Banyana_Banyana on X.
EFC is live this Thursday. The indestructible champion Zakir Badat descends from the Wild Mountains to defend his welterweight title against Nigeria's electrifying kickboxing champion Segun Ogunaike. Plus, Timnan Lawuli takes on Sibusiso Suvendila, and undefeated Kevin Pretorius steps up to challenge Oswaldo Benedito. EFC 124 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let me read one or two of your messages before I go over to the call. Someone here says, and it's Felix in Midrand. Felix says, this is a clear case. This is in relation to the Dr. John Hlophe matter. He says, this is a clear case of overreach by the courts. I hope the MK party gets to be heard here too. It's in black and white who is excluded in any parliamentary body, and Hlophe qualifies. We can't have unelected individual judges subverting democratic outcomes. What stops them from barring Gauteng Mackenzie as a minister for his criminal past? Why should we allow apartheid functionaries and beneficiaries like Breitenbach, I take it's a reference to Glynis Breitenbach, from those communities. So that is the sentiment coming through from Felix in Midrand. Let me immediately take one that I think it holds the opposite view. Someone here says, again, what's wrong with our parliament? Why are the courts always finding them wanting by not following the law? Our country is where it is today because our lawmakers are not following the laws that they themselves are making. Always the courts ruling the decisions they take are unconstitutional. Always. What's wrong with them? So that is the other sentiment that you are hearing on that issue. And in fact, it dominates all the calls that I will take in the next few minutes. Let me take them in rapid succession, pull myself back and hear from you more than I will be engaging. So let's start with Linda in Boksburg. Good morning to you, Linda. You want to weigh in on this issue? Short and sharp and direct to the point.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. How are you?
Very well. How are you? Please go ahead.
It's bad law. The court is really, and I agree with the previous message you read. It's a classic case of judicial overreach. It's a perversion of the law to accommodate the moral outrage of the few. That's basically what it is. Because if Dr. John Hlophe is not a fit and proper person, he would not be in Parliament. Simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
The fact that he is a fit and proper person to be a parliamentarian, to be a member of the legislature, he's allowed to sit. You can't say a member of parliament is not allowed to sit in this committee or that committee because of the moral outrage that you have against him. No, it's wrong. Number two, there's a judgment by the then deputy judge president of the Gauteng division.
Yes.
Sutherland, where he was dealing with the football dispute, the promotion saga between Royal AM and I think it's Polokwane City at the time. In that judgment, there's a clarity on the fact that the bodies, all types of organizations, have the right to make their own rules.
Yeah.
Once they have made those rules, anybody who is a member of that body or institution or organization must comply with those rules. You can't go to court and ask the court to make rules for you. What the court has done here by saying, amongst other factors, they should have considered the fact that Judge Hlophe was impeached, is the creation of a rule that does not exist.
All right, Linda, thank you for that.
You're making rules for Parliament.
Gotcha. That's Linda in Boksburg. Let me move on swiftly to Bomela in Mangaung. Good morning to you, Bomela. Also on the same issue, straight to the point, please.
Good morning to us and your listeners. With respect, the issue is before court was not about John Hlophe. I have high respect for the man. But the issue really is about the exercise of public power.
Yeah.
Once you are voted into Parliament, you are voted by the public. And parties are free to nominate whoever they want to nominate. But the role of the National Assembly is to then designate that person to that body. Now, the designation involves the exercise of a discretion, and that discretion should and must be exercised within the parameters of the law. The exercise of that public power simply suggests that parliamentarians, when they designate, they must then apply themselves. For the past 30 years, they admit they never did that.
Yeah.
Why am I saying so? The National Assembly Speaker chooses not to defend or to oppose the application and files an explanatory affidavit. In the explanatory affidavit, says, well, don't even ask for course because I'm not opposing this application. I now understand what my role is, or parliamentary role.
I see.
All other political parties, not a single one of them was party to the opposition, simply suggesting that it is not the courts that are, in this respect, with respect, are wrong.
Yeah.
But it is the quality of the deployed members of political parties to the legislative arm of government that is meant to make laws that is a problem. Because then for 30 years, people don't understand that they even hold the discretion to designate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. That's Bomela in Mangaung. It's been quite interesting just hearing that being explained, that actually Parliament as an institution doesn't have to rubber stamp the nominations of the political parties. They do have a discretion to exercise, which must be subject to the adherence to the country's laws. Begin Bombela, short and sharp for me, and to the point, also on this same point.
Very flabbergasted, perturbed, and perplexed about this decision of this court decision.
How so?
The separation of powers is very clean and clear. The judiciary are not laws makers. And secondly, you'll agree with me, Thulas, and you will know that when courts are interpreting any legislation, they must apply Section 39(2) of the Constitution.
Sure.
In this matter, there is no jurisprudence that suggests that the appointment of Dr. John Hlophe, it has happened before in any way. There is no legislation that has spoken to about this particular incident. The court does not have any perimeter to be within and to make any judgment as far as this matter is concerned. The legislature was supposed now to enact a new law that will stand, and the matter of Dr. Hlophe should be set as a jurisprudence. But in this matter, I say our judiciary system are failing us because they are favorable, they are not punctual, they are not fair. And it is very painful that anything that has got to do with the former state president, Jacob Zuma, they always make sure that they put a black brush. And I don't know how long is this old man going to suffer, because it's over 20 years being persecuted and without any tangible decision. I thank you, Thulas.
All right, Peggy, thank you for that. That's Peggy in Bombela with some strong sentiments there in reaction to that decision. We'll take more of your calls a bit later on.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime, because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. S3, open up.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag The Morning Brief.
22 minutes after 8. Well, at least one political party has already entered electoral mode, right? We don't even know when the local government elections will be taking place next year, but the ANC in the Dalla Omar region, that is in Cape Town, it already has launched into electoral mode. It has declared that Cape Town's 2026 local government elections will be a turning point for the city's governance. Frustrated by rising costs, entrenched inequality, and what they describe as the DA's growing arrogance after 18 years in power, the ANC unveiled what it calls a people-first vision to reverse structural injustice and return power to ordinary residents. Let's speak to Ndithini Kido of the ANC in Dalla Omar region, and he is chairperson in that region. Ndithini, good morning. Thank you for your time. So tell me about what brought you to this point. You are launching almost an electoral campaign quite early, and I believe that it is founded on the frustration with the recent processes around the tariff increases that have played themselves out in the processes in Cape Town.
Good morning to us and good morning to your listeners. Look, the ANC in Cape Town is joining the growing voices against the DA's arrogance in the city of Cape Town, as it relates to the tariff increases, but to the already seriously challenging service delivery issues that have been afflicting the people of Cape Town, particularly in the Cape Flats.
So tell me about that. When you're saying that it's the growing arrogance, I take it you are referring to the initial proposals around revenue and tariffs, but they've since been revised by the city. How does that display arrogance?
In the first place, it didn't really even have to get there, because the DA comes to the people of Cape Town in a way that seeks to portray Cape Town as a city in another country, not in Cape Town. And then within its Cape Town, create a Cape Town for the other side, the people who have, and the Cape Town for the people who do not have. So already that, and President, we know that on the day where the mayor was to table the revised budget, people, the general public were not permitted to come and observe in council, hence blocking public participation and to listen to what they are now revising.
But again, I say to you, parties make decisions when they are the governing party. But when they are prepared to listen and then revise these decisions, you'd be hard-pressed to make the point about arrogance, right? I mean, with reference to situations playing themselves out at a national level, for example, whether or not a party is willing to hear the voices when the people are saying, we don't like this decision and policy that you are making, reconsider it and rethink it.
Yes, Thulasizwe. People who win majority in democracy, they win it to govern the people and to govern them well and listen to them. Now, this is a forced rethink to the city of Cape Town, Thulasizwe. Then the expectant then there would have been that people would be allowed to hear what is the revision now, and then how all political parties and those present would participate in such a revised mode.
Yeah. So you've taken the opportunity and you're basically saying, don't waste a political situation, crisis, and you are launching your vision for, the 2026 local government elections. Tell me what you are proposing and how you see yourself digging yourself out of the electoral performance hole into which the ANC has fallen over the years in the city of Cape Town.
Look, the African National Congress, as we all know, that is in the process of renewing itself, first as a party, number two, as a party that would serve the people. All we are proposing for Cape Town is a social contract for Cape Town, where at least there will be a fair and affordable city where all who would live in city of Cape Town will feel welcome and also be serviced. Really, it's a matter for us that for the last 18 years, you see, when South Africans say 13 years of government, we in Cape Town will say that must be calculated with the 18 years of DA neglect in the city of Cape Town, especially for the communities in the Cape Flats, your Bondierville, Mitchell's Plain, Retreat, Khayelitsha, and Gugulethu.
What will you say to someone who says, you taking over the city of Cape Town, that's a pipe dream? Any thought or notion that you could return to the governance of the city is a pipe dream? What will you say to someone who says that?
I would say to someone who says that, just give the ANC a chance in 2026 and give it, because the lived experience of Cape Town necessitates an immediate and an urgent change in Cape Town.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Ndithini Chido of the African National Congress in the Dala Omar region, where he is chairperson.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
And it's football action, isn't it, Zai? Banyana versus Zambia.
Zambia, that's right. They'll face them this afternoon. The final of the Tri-Nation Series, all happening at Lucas Maripa Stadium in Attridgeville. Kickoff 3 p.m. The encounter follows a 3-2 win over Botswana last week for Banyana and serve as preparations for the upcoming Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco, and that's this July. Now, Zambia, they were held to a 1-1 draw by Botswana, and they bring a different threat with a rapid front three, something coach Desiree Ellis says the team must contain.
The Zambia brings something different with their front three. That's really quick, and probably Grace just behind them. So they bring something different. So our defensive organization's got to be really good. And when we win the ball, we got to make sure, that we hurt them. So that's going to be really, really important. They've been in camp more than a week.
Let's go elsewhere. Maurizio Sarri has rejoined Lazio as head coach 15 months after leaving the role. The 66-year-old replaces Marco Baroni, who led the Serie A side to a 7th-place finish last season to miss out on European qualification. Sarri resigned in March 2024 following a 5th defeat in 6 games and was also heavily critical of the club's transfer policy. The former Chelsea boss spent 3 years previously in charge of Lazio, and President Claudio Lotito said in a statement, Maurizio Sarri has returned home. Now, cricket, the Proteas begin their final preparation for the World Test Championship final with a 4-day warm-up match against Zimbabwe in Arundel starting today. Temba Bavuma's side hasn't played a red ball game since January, and the skipper looking for more match time. After the Zimbabwe match, the Protea squad will head to Lords, where they'll face Australia on the 11th of June in the Test final. And finally, MMA history made in Cape Town on the 19th of July as the Professional Fighters League launches its first ever PFL Africa event at Grand West. The 14-fight card features world champions like Johnny Eblin and Dakota Dicheva, plus top African talent including Kosi Ndebele and Juliet Yuka. This marks the beginning of a 4-event African tournament backed by PFL chairman and Cameroonian superstar Francis Ngannou, aiming to spotlight fighters from 14 countries. That's your sport. We'll be back with a fighting chance. That's John Heriker around 12:30. I'm Jai Khan.
With the headlines, I'm Dinamo Daung. Good morning. Umkhonto Wesizwe Party leader Jacob Zuma will brief the media in Durban today. He's expected to focus on the current political climate in the country. In other news, the organization Undoing Tax Abuse says the EFF's case against an increase in the general fuel levy is not strong. The Western Cape High Court is expected today to hear the EFF's urgent application against the increase. And police say they expect to make an arrest soon in the murder of IFP Deputy Chief Whip Keta Mabala Sithole. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Christian Joburg, it's on the bike one going north up by Houghton Drive. Before you get to Houghton Drive, it's sort of between Empire Road and Houghton Drive, and it's a very heavy backlog on that run through the Crown interchange. Traffic backlogging right through to Boysons this morning. Behind that, the M2 to get into that Mike 1 to turn north is queuing back to Benrose area. Also, crash on the N12 and R24 routes after they've merged going into Galuli's interchange, and a bit of a hold up as you turn through Buccleuch towards Midrand. Delays up to Allendale Road, the N1 behind that, backing from Rivonia, the N3 backs from sort of Limbro Park territory. Durban, a heads up, if you're driving into the city centre, the M4 is under pressure. There's roadworks, a middle lane closure on the Esplanade as you come off the M4, moving into central Durban. That caused delays all day yesterday along the Esplanade, only easing at about 7 p.m. And of course this morning, because the Esplanade's backed up to the M4 queues all the way back to Umbulo. A breakdown before the airport up by Sabaya if you're on your way for flight connections, bit of a queue to form there from the Gateway area. And Cape Town with some rain about the city this morning. Everything on a go slow. High volumes, wet roads. It's all very slow. N1 backing from Belleville right through the city centre. Marine Drive's got traffic all over it between Tableview and Pardon Island. And 2 crash scenes on the N2 out of town at Khayelitsha by Meway, causing delays on your way out towards Somerset West. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
One more time, let's say good morning to Ndauling Lichela. Ndauling, let's start with, this doesn't sound like good news to me. Factory activity, you're saying it slipped in May.
That's right, Thulas. And this print marks the 7th consecutive month of contraction, despite a slight improvement in activity and demand in April. In May, the ABSA PMI index declined to 43.1 points, remaining below the 50-point midpoint that indicates that activity is still in contractionary territory. The decline in the PMI is mainly due to a drop in the supplier deliveries index, which may be driven by lower demand rather than improved logistics. Economists expect the sector to weigh on economic growth in the first and second quarters of 2025. The sector's prolonged downturn is also having a negative impact on employment, with the employment index marking its 14th straight month of contraction. Despite these challenges, there seems to be some bright spots. The purchasing price index has eased, indicating a slowdown in cost pressures supported by lower oil prices and a stronger rand. Additionally, the index tracking expected business conditions has also improved, reflecting improved sentiment among businesses. Now, this improvement in sentiment is attributed to the suspension of global tariffs, or rather that pause we've been seeing, and businesses' faith that local political disagreements on policy within the government of national unity would be resolved.
And I see that there's an update in one of our favorite indices, new vehicle sales. What's come out in May?
So in May, we saw vehicle sales tick higher, and this is the 8th consecutive month this has happened, with 45,300 units being sold, representing a 22% increase compared to the same period last year. Now, passenger cars still leading the gains, accounting for sales of over 31,000 units. According to NAMSA, the Motor Industry Association, the aggregate market is 12.6% ahead of the same stage of 2024. But analysts are divided on the sustainability of the recovery. Some, like Brandon Cohen, who's the chair of the National Automobile Dealers Association, believes the real market is stronger than it appears, citing that 12 out of 24 Chinese brands currently selling vehicles in South Africa don't report their sales. So he does say there's a bit of disconnect in the numbers that we are seeing. Michael Mabasa, who's NAMSA CEO, is more bullish, citing the Reserve Bank's latest rate cut, a stronger rand and lower inflation as benefits that will boost the car market. He believes a structural decline in inflation expectations could bode well further for the sector in the coming months.
So what are they saying? That the Chinese brands, the Chinese car brands are not reporting their sales, and therefore the numbers could actually be higher than what is reported?
Yes.
Given how well they're doing.
Exactly, Thulas.
All right, lastly then, Dowling, what kind of a day can we expect on this Tuesday?
So local markets likely to start the day mixed following international peers. A slow day when it comes to company earnings here at home, but attention will shift to GDP numbers, which are out at 11:30 today. And ahead of that print, the rand is trading stronger. It is at 17.85 to the dollar. Over in the US, futures are downbeat as China and the US's trade deal and relations remain under the spotlight. Lastly, in Asia, stocks mostly in the green, investors on that front also keeping their attention locked on the developments between Beijing and Washington and digesting those downbeat numbers or factory numbers out of China.
Dowling, thank you for that. That's Dowling Lichela. She's kept you updated on business, the economy, as well as the markets throughout the course of the show today.
Gordon Ramsay is back, and your favorite kitchen disasters are still somehow in business. New season, same confused chefs, terrifying walk-ins, and enough grease to fry your Wi-Fi. Watch as Gordon tries to fix the unfixable with nothing but sheer rage, British sarcasm, and an iron stomach. Kitchen Nightmares Season 8, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on S3. Come for the food, stay for the emotional damage.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief.
Yeah, so we thought we'd bring you this conversation. It has to do with the government's Spaza Shop Support Fund that was announced a few months ago. I think it was in April. It is designed to revitalize the country's Spaza shops owned by South Africans and food outlets in townships and rural areas. So an update that came through in the last few days telling us that it has disbursed just 6 million rand of its intended 500 million rand allocations thus far. So that's not a great figure in terms of the progress. I mean, of course, it was in April, but we are now, in June, only at 6 million rand. And there's also been issues about the criteria and whether or not the people that have been applying actually qualify to get this kind of funding. So let's speak to Benji Seitlamo, who is the Acting Director of Economic Development for the City of Johannesburg. Benji, good morning and thank you for your time. I spoke to you on my Sunday show on SABC News, on the SABC News channel, and I found that conversation to be really helpful. So let's pick up on it. The outcome, the latest reporting saying that 6 million rand of 500 million rand has been disbursed thus far. That aligns with the lower than expected numbers of people who qualify having applied, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. It also shows that we have to do a lot in terms of compliance with regards to helping our local Spaza shop owners. Because as I had alluded on Sunday, we are currently facing a situation where the majority of our applicants are really not compliant if we follow the bylaws to the latter. And therefore, this is a challenge. And we have to work hard as a City of Johannesburg, including our partners and the Department of Small Business and Development, to assist our people to be compliant and to follow the law. I will give you stats. Remember, I spoke about the stats that we are currently capturing. Yeah, so I'll give you Region G. Region G is El Dorado Park, Lenasia, and Porji, and Orange Farm. To date, we've captured through the manual system 251 applications just for Region G. And in terms of that, applications with COA, meaning health certificate and fire certificate, it's only 2 out of 251. And then you look at applications with fire certificate and no applications with health certificate and no fire certificate, 5. And then applications with fire certificate and no health certificate, 25. And this is from the total that we've captured so far, the 251. So obviously, this will reflect in the applications and the work that the Department of Small Business and Development is doing in terms of the fund.
So, Benji, for the benefit of those who did not catch our earlier conversation, you are mentioning the different types of compliance there, and that's because before a person qualifies for this funding, which comes either in the form of a grant or a loan of some sorts. For them to qualify for that, they need to have complied and have various certificates. Talk us through those and the level of difficulty or ease of obtaining these certificates.
So naturally, to get these permits from the City of Johannesburg, it's fairly easy. You just have to be compliant and apply for this. So there's applications that you need to undertake. So the first important permit that you must apply for and get, it's a building plan. Your building plan must be approved. So your shop, not your house is a building plan, but your shop on the site, if you build a structure next to your house as a Spaza shop, that structure must have its own separate building plan that you must submit to the Department of Development Planning in the City of Johannesburg for them to approve it. Once you've acquired that building approval, you then take that building plan to our fire department, EMS. The fire department will also then do a site inspection of your Spaza shop. After having done that, they will then issue out, if they are happy, let's assume they are happy, they'll then issue you out with a fire certificate. Once you've got those 2 permits, the building permit and fire certificate, the third step will be for you to then visit our environmental health department, where you will then apply for a health certificate. Once you've applied for a health certificate, let's assume again it's approved. The next step will then, you take all those 3 permits, you submit your Spaza shop permit, which comes directly to the Department of Economic Development, which will then issue you out with a Spaza shop permit.
So it all sounds quite cumbersome, doesn't it, Benji? I mean, 3 different permits before you can even get to the Spaza shop permit, paving the way for you to then apply for this funding. Doesn't it defeat the whole purpose that is about revitalizing the local ownership of Spaza shops if there are so many compliance? I mean, one of the examples you are citing there, the building certificates. Many people in townships will say that I simply don't have that. Now, having to go through the various departments and knocking on those doors, doesn't it defeat the whole purpose of this fund?
Not really. I think it entices people, and that is Simelane, to be compliant. For instance, if the city and the Department of Small Businesses are not working or not collaborating on its initiatives, we are going to have a situation where the department would fund Spaza shops that are not compliant with the city's bylaws, and that will be regarded as wasteful expenditure, because when the city comes into those site operations and we instruct or we give notices for them to demolish their illegal structures, it's wasteful expenditure. And therefore, hence we are having this regional stakeholder engagement so that we tell our people how to be compliant. We encourage them how to be compliant. We guide them. We even visit their site and tell them where to fix, so that by the time they apply for this fund, they are compliant. We want them to access this fund. We want them to access this fund. We want to support them to access this fund. However, we also would love for them to be compliant with the city's bylaws, because it is important for us to have our citizens respecting the laws of the city.
Lastly, Benji, I wanted us to talk to the element of Spaza shop ownership, because this fund is open to South African nationals who are Spaza shop owners. In the work that you've been doing, what have you encountered? Anecdotally, people will tell you that many of the Spaza shops are now owned by foreign nationals, either permitted and well documented, but in many instances, we are told that many of them undocumented.
No, I'll give you the stats. As the city of Johannesburg, we are a very honest institution. So I'll tell you for now, Dr. Simelane, for instance, the numbers have increased from our previous discussion on Sunday. We are now at captured manually, 1,168 applications captured on our manual system. From those, in terms of the issue that you've just raised, South Africans, we only have 439 applications captured so far. And then from non-South Africans, you have 727, which is the highest number compared to the two. So therefore, it therefore means that we have to do our work in terms of involving Home Affairs to come and assist us with vetting and verifying the documents that have been submitted by non-South Africans, so that we are able, when we move to the next stage of vetting and verification as the city, the Department of Home Affairs will then have done its task in terms of assisting the city with vetting and verifying the asylum and refugee status of the applicants.
And that work is not helped by instances where fake documents are submitted, is it?
Yes. So we have received some of those fake documents, also invalid documents, also from South Africans who have submitted invalid documents in terms of your health certificate, your fire certificate, and your building plans. And therefore, we have to then make contact with them, come back to them, and then also request our sister departments, especially those who are responsible for inspections, to go and inspect the site and ensure that actually they are there. For instance, there is cases where our development planning department will visit the site as indicated on the application form. And then when you go there, you find no Spaza shop, and you find Omakoko telling you that I don't have a Spaza shop, I don't know why my number was used.
Sure.
So the vetting and verification process is intentionally slow because we are dealing with a lot of challenges and issues from people who are using invalid and irregular and fake documents to expedite this process or to trick the system. But unfortunately, they won't be able to do so because the city has mechanisms to make sure that we mitigate such issues.
All right, Benji, thank you for your time once again. I thought it would be of benefit to our listeners for them to hear some of the details and nuances that you are finding as you are carrying out that work. That's Benji Seitlamo, who is Acting Director of Economic Development for the city of Joburg, just outlining some of the work they are doing, including the undertaking road shows that are meant to assist Spaza shop owners in complying with some of these requirements. As you were hearing there, the many detailed, nuances that are coming through really from the number of permits that a person needs to have in place before they can qualify for this Spaza shop support fund to the tune of 500 million rand. But in its time since April thereabouts, only 6 million rand having been dispersed across the country.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let me take one or two of your voice notes and as well as take some of your calls now.
Hey, good morning, Thulas. Good morning, Mgoni. This is Nhlanhla here. Hey, with all the respect to Judge Hlophe, I think the message is clear. The lawbreaker cannot be a lawmaker. Period. All these shenanigans people are saying, they are trying to make their own speculation and laws against this judgment. A lawbreaker cannot be a lawmaker. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of framing it. And I imagine that many people would have a lot to say about that. A lawbreaker cannot be a lawmaker, says Nhlanhla there. Thank you for that. I will take a few more, but I do need to take a quick traffic update now.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still some hassles getting out of Joburg up towards Pretoria on that turn through Buccleuch up towards Allendale Road. So backlog of traffic into Allendale. So behind that, the N1 from Rivonia approaching the off-ramp to Midrand, and the N3 is even heavier going up from Alex past Limbro Park to get in as well. Crash on the Mike 1 North. It's been there a little while. It's just happened by Oxford Road, just before Oxford Road. Traffic coming through the Crown, badly backed up. Mike 1 from Boyson's, M2 coming through from Joe Slow. Those all fairly heavy. Don't forget, as you get off the M4 Southern Freeway and turn into Durban, the Esplanade has some roadworks, a middle lane closure right in the sort of heart of the CBD. That route was busy all day yesterday, and it's still really badly backing out traffic on the M4 coming up to the Esplanade off-ramp. Broken down vehicle before Subaya on your way to the airport. That's heavy. And then Cape Town, just really busy on account of the wet weather conditions. I think surprising a few motorists this morning just how wet it is. There's big traffic on the N1 from Belleville all the way through the city centre. Marine Drive full of traffic, and there appears to be an issue on the R300 going southbound, queuing traffic passing Chaos River towards the Stellenbosch Arterial Road. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
A bowl of cereal, a glass of orange juice, some flavored yogurt for breakfast. Ultra-processed products such as these may be high in sugar, salt, or saturated fat. Having too much of these products could lead to diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease. Our health is in danger. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels. Now, sign the petition on heala.org. HEALA.org.
In a land scorched by the sun and shaped by time, life refuses to surrender. From the silent stalk of the Arabian leopard to the resilient march of the sand gazelle, witness nature's fiercest survivors. Arabian Inferno, a journey into one of Earth's most extreme habitats where every day is a battle for survival. This is the wild. This is Arabian Inferno. Sundays at 6 p.m. on S3. Open up.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Yeah, lots of reaction and reflection on the conversation we just had with Benji Seitlamo about the processes to apply for the Spaza Shop Support Fund. I see that there were questions that you guys were sending while we were busy with that conversation. Unfortunately, I did not catch them in time to put to Benji. But Lele in Lindhaven asking about where do you get the building certificate? Basically, it's a submission of your plans. So what Benji was saying is that your house has its own drawn-up plans. You need plans that have to do with the Spaza shop. If it's a standalone building structure within the, within your yard, you then need to submit that to the city council for it to be approved. And that's part of the compliance processes. Then there's the fire safety one, then environmental one that has to do with environmental, health and safety. So it's in the city where you live and where your Spaza shop is located. They should be able to guide you where to go. All right, let me take one or two voice notes and then end it off with the calls.
Morning, Thulas. I haven't seen any Spaza shop that is closed since. Nothing's business as usual. Does it mean all these Spaza shops now comply? No, not even one that is closed. Business as usual. That is the government of South Africa. Norman from Brixton.
Thank you for that. I remember that conversation about getting people to comply or else you will not be able to continue to operate. It would be nice actually to get an update of where things stand with that, because this new fund flows from those conversations that were saying many Spaza shops are not compliant with health and safety regulations. Let's regularize and then assist them and reclaim the ownership of Spaza shops by South Africans. But I wonder to what extent that conversation about closing those ones that are not compliant has gone.
Good morning, Thulasizwe and your listeners. This is King in the Northern Cape, DR. I do think that as a country, we should just let the courts run the country or govern, because every day we are at court government is found wanting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It would be lopsided if we did that. We would lose the balance. The whole idea is that there are three legs on which we balance our society. The executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. And between them, they check each other, checks and balances, and therefore the system remains stable. But I get the point you are making. I would say it's the product of a supreme constitution. So therefore, everything is tested for its compliance with this constitution that we all have agreed that it is supreme. It trumps almost everything. In fact, it trumps everything in this society. So if anything is inconsistent with the constitution, oops, there it goes. It's out altogether. But interesting take on that. In fact, let's continue with that theme. Putana in Rosebank, good morning. You want to reflect on the decision about Dr. John Hlophe. Please go ahead.
Indeed, my brother, good morning. You know, the judgment to me is baffling. Why Hlophe is not suitable only on this portfolio, but is suitable to other portfolios. And remember, the right wing were unhappy about the judgment when it was against them. They were calling the judges activists, socialists. Are these ones activist right-wing judges? Are they?
Let me ask you, Putana. You're saying why is it not suitable for this committee, but suitable for other committees?
For other committees.
Does it matter that the judgment says that what should have been taken into account is the fact that he was impeached in a process that was led by the very same committee that is meant to oversee the conduct of the judiciary?
It matters, of course. But why if he's not qualified to that portfolio, they must grab him in all the portfolio. He must not even qualify to be in the parliament in the first place. That is my argument.
I see.
So only that portfolio is important. Other portfolios must be led by crooks and thieves. It's fine.
I get the point now.
It is frustrating, man.
All right, Putana, that's Putana in Rosebank. Let me hear from Mishak in Emalahleni. Good morning to you, Mishak.
Morning to the season.
Yes, on the same issue. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the court has issued a judgment that is precise and correct. You can't have a person being dismissed through the same process of parliament and then bring him back to come and oversee the appointment of judges. This guy has been stripped off through all the legal process. And then now, the parliament, rogue parliament, because this is the same parliament that allowed the state capture go unabated. They allow him to go and sit. They want to designate him to go and sit in the JSC. The man has been dismissed through the process of JSC and the parliament. You see, as long as we are having these people who are certificated, not educated to understand and interpret the rule of law, then we are going to have the Arab state capture continue again. John Hlophe dismissed is a rogue judge. He does not qualify.
All right, Mishak, thank you for that. I think we've lost Mishak there, and I think we have that situation arising once again. But we got the point from Mishak in Emalahleni. Let me go to the voice notes. Someone wants to reflect on the conversation we had earlier on about the situation where people who are found to be not have capacity to stand trial, to stand trial, to not have capacity to stand trial, but ending up being in prison simply because there are not enough psychiatric wards in the normal healthcare system. That is the conversation we had earlier on with Singabako Nxumalo of the Department of Correctional Services. Let's hear what someone has to say about that.
Thulas, how can the correctional services person say that they don't have a right to refuse if the court send a patient? So if a court sends a minor child of 10 or 12, does that mean you don't have a right to refuse? Certainly the Department of Correctional Services must apply for an interdict against the justice system so that it can send proper and valid people to prison. If they can't just say they don't have a right to refuse.
Yeah, I picked up that point you are making, that when it comes as an order from the court that take this person into your custody, they don't have an option, they don't have a choice. They have to, take that person in. It calls for a broader conversation, and I think it has to be a system-wide conversation. Where do the judges send these people, for example, where there are not enough psychiatric wards? Because the law says they should be kept as state patients. But where there are no wards, what do you do with them?
Hi, Tulas. Hoping you're well. This is Daniel. Tulas, politicians sometimes, I don't know, they just behave like kids, right? I like that the last question that you asked the DA spokesperson, Willie Oka. When something suits them, right? Now, the Constitution is right. When something doesn't suit them, no, we got to challenge the legality of this Constitution. Everybody knows what that means. They're playing games with us. Thanks to us.
Yeah, so on the conversation goes, really. It depends on which side of the argument you end up, the winning side or the losing side. You always will have those sentiments about the suitability even of the Constitution that we have, particularly within political circles. It's certainly been amplified quite a bit over the last few months. But that's it, really. That's our full and final account to you for this Tuesday in lieu of your morning brief. Stand by, Kete Motlatlana and the team with the talking point, picking it up after the news with Dineo Mutaung.
Thank you, Tulas. Top story, Zuma to speak on political climate at Durban briefing, and South Korea votes for new president. A very good morning. Umkhonto Wesizwe Party leader Jacob Zuma will brief the media in Durban today. He's expected to focus on the current political climate in the country. This after the Western Cape High Court ruling yesterday that the National Assembly's decision to designate party's deputy president as a member of the Judicial Service Commission was invalid and unconstitutional. Last week, Colleen Makubele replaced Mzwane Lemanyi, who was removed as chief whip of the MK party in Parliament. In other news, the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, OUTA, says the EFF's case against an increase in the general fuel levy is not strong. The Western Cape High Court is today expected to hear the EFF's urgent application against the increase. Finance Minister Inoko Dongwana announced increases of 15 cents per litre for diesel and 16 cents per litre for petrol respectively when he tabled the 2025 budget in Parliament last month. The general fuel levy increase is expected to take effect tomorrow. OUTA CEO Wayne Duvenage.
I don't think the EFF's case is a strong one, and by saying that we're not advocating that the fuel levy should go up, but it is one of the mechanisms available to the Minister of Finance, which he has every right to do as he balances the books, and he's been very good, I think, in the last 3 years by not increasing it. So going up 16 cents as a reprieve or as an alternative to putting the VAT increase up by 0.5%, we believe is the lesser of two evils.
Police say they expect to make an arrest soon in the murder of IFP Deputy Chief Whip Keta Mabala Sithole. National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola says he's satisfied that the evidence that the investigating team has gathered has taken it close to making a breakthrough. Sithole was gunned down in Katlehong 3 days ago. National Police spokesperson Atlenda Mate.
General Fani Masemola